Okay, okie dokie. So good. Yeah.
I sent you the flyer.
Ah, okay. Okay. You stopped my inspiration.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today is our fourth day of our seminar promoting self-regulated learning in English language teaching. And I am sure we have been enjoying ourselves and learning a lot of new information about how to enhance our teaching. So remember, please keep our mics off, muted, so that we can have a smooth process without any background noises and interruptions of the presentation. As you know, I will like to share this quote for the day. It's from Ryan Blair that says, if it is important for you, you will find a way. If not, you will find an excuse.
Oh,
So
you're tough, Veronica.
yeah. When I read it, it was like, yes. That's why we are not finding an excuse today or this week, because we are here together just for the support of the extension and continuing education of the College of Humanities. They work along with the English Department Coordinating Committee of this seminar. And we are here on an online modality to keep enhancing our self in behalf of our students. And to begin officially, we'll call on Professor Marisol Ortega, who is the coordinator of the Long-Term Education Committee of English Department of the College of Humanities from Universidad de Panamá. She will give us some greeting words.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I see that all of you have found a way to be here because you want to accomplish something else to increase your knowledge. So I have to congratulate you. Very good. Thank you for being here. God bless you all. We are going back to Veronica.
Thank you, Professor Marisol. Yeah. So with no longer delay, because we are eager to learn something new today, we will call on Professor Daniello, who will address the topic reflective practice in English teaching. So keep everything ahead, take your notes and be attentive to what we are going to learn today. Professor Daniel, the room is yours.
Thank you so much, Teacher Veronica and Teacher Marisol. It's a pleasure to be with you here again. So today we're going to be changing our perspective. We've been talking about strategies that we can use to help our learners to become autonomous and self-regulated and reflective. And now we're going to be turning the camera back on ourselves. Okay, so how can we use reflection to improve our own teaching and to help us understand where we're at and where we want to go? Okay, so today we're going to be talking about our own, reflecting on our own practice and our own professional development. Can everybody hear me okay? Just give me a thumbs up. Yep. Okay, yep. Great. For those of you that are just arriving, can I kindly remind you that it is obligatory to sign the attendance list. So if you haven't done that yet, please do so before you forget. The link is currently at the bottom of the chat, so you can easily find it. Okay, so let's get going. So as teacher Veronica said, the topic of today is teacher reflective practice. So as teacher Veronica did, I would also like to start with some quotes. I think quotes can be a very nice way to start a session. So this is maybe the godfather of reflective practice, a guy called John Dewey. He was around in the 1930s, and he said, "We do not learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience." Okay, so it's very interesting that often, you know, as teachers, we say, "Oh yes, she's very experienced," or "He has 20 years of experience." But okay, if we don't reflect on our experience, maybe we are not as enriched as we could be from that experience. So I think that John Dewey really makes us focus on the importance of experience.
Que los mismos compañeros lo...
Please keep your mics off.
Esa misma.
Okay, don't worry, the person I'm sure doesn't realize. Let me just quickly mute everybody, just 1 second. Okay, mute all. All right, we're good. Okay, so let me go back to the... Okay, so the next quote is from Pete Hall and Alyssa Simoral, and they say, "The more reflective you are, the more effective you are." Okay, so again, if we want to be successful, effective teachers, we need to be constantly questioning what we're doing and considering other options and considering other approaches. So, you know, we should never feel like, okay, that is the perfect class on the present continuous, right? I'm just going to repeat that forever. We should always be looking for ways to slightly adjust or improve. And of course, each class is different. So we have to constantly be reflecting on the learners and how appropriate our materials and approaches are. Okay, this one's from a guy called Tony Frontier, and he says, "Purposeful reflection means not just thinking about our behaviors and their effect on the work we do, but doing something about it. What am I going to do differently in order to better meet students' needs?" I think, again, this is a really, I chose this quote because I think it's so important. Often we think of reflection as some kind of intellectual meditation, you know, over a cup of coffee, but it's a little bit kind of, you know, distanced from action. Well, Tony Frontier reminds us that reflection must be followed up by action. So when we reflect, we're thinking about other ways to do things, and then we need to make sure that we actually follow through. Okay, the next quote is from Nicole Arndt, and she says, "The goal is concrete, the intention has been set, but if I don't stop and reflect, there's no point to it all. Teaching is reflective practice." So I think her message here is that our job involves constantly analyzing and reflecting. Now that happens in the classroom, right? Like you're making hundreds and thousands of spontaneous decisions every time you teach, okay? So you're constantly adjusting and thinking, this activity is not going so well, I need to change it. So you're actually doing it during the class as well as after the class. Well, so everybody does it during the class, but what I'm hoping to encourage is through this session is the value of also doing it after the class. And this is a message from Dylan William from the University of London. And he says, "If we create a culture where every teacher believes they need to improve, not because they are not good enough, but because they can be even better, there is no limit to what we can achieve." Okay, so what I like about this message is that Dylan William is seeing reflective practice not as like, oh, I'm a bad teacher, I have these mistakes or these problems, but rather, how can I be better? How can I continue to improve? How can I polish my teaching? All of you are great teachers. The fact that you're here today demonstrates your passion for your profession. And so reflective practice should not make us feel bad. It should be something that makes us feel as though we're in a constant state of improvement. Okay. All right. So reflective practice encourages, sorry, I missed a word there. It should say encourages you to constantly evolve. Now, I once heard somebody say something at a conference. You know, sometimes people say things and you never forget them. And this lady was saying to me how sometimes teachers can get into the bad habit of basically repeating what they do year after year, and that's what sometimes results in burnout, right? When teachers get sick of the profession because basically they've been doing the same thing year after year without any kind of changes or new approaches. And so she said to me, do you have 20 years experience, or do you have 2 years repeated 10 times? So I think that's an interesting reflection, right? That just because we've been teaching for 20 years doesn't mean that necessarily each of those years we were changing and evolving. So I think it's really important if you can. I mean, of course, sometimes you come across a resource or a particular technique that you really love and you're going to continue using, and that's fine. But what I'm arguing against is getting into a rut where you do the same thing year after year without, any kind of innovation or change. Okay, I've been recommending certain books. Now, this book, Inside Teaching, is one of the books that I really refer to. I have the habit of buying maybe one or two or three books about teaching every year. Of course, I might, at the school I work at or the university I work at, I maybe look in the library too, and of course online there's all kinds of resources. But I also like to build up my own little library, and it's useful sometimes just to open the book and, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And this is one of the books I go back to most. It's called Inside Teaching. It's actually, I think, out of print now, but on Amazon, they have a service where they can put you in, you can basically buy used books. I just checked before this session, and the book is available for about $7 used. Okay, so I really recommend this book. It has, and some of the activities we're going to do today are taken from this book. Okay, so the first activity, this is I scanned from the book. It's called Opening Your Classroom Door. And the instructions are as follows. I'm going to ask teacher Sharon, would you be so kind as to read the first paragraph of the instructions, please?
Sure. Opening your classroom door. Task 3. Take a sheet of paper and jot down in a few sentences or phrases how you would describe your teaching to someone who wanted to get a feeling of what it's like to be in the classroom, in your classroom. If possible, tell or show these notes to a colleague they may wish to ask questions or comment.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so that's what we're going to do right now. Just as an opening activity, I would like you to, on a piece of paper, you can either do it with a pen and paper, or if you prefer, on the keyboard, using a Word document. And I'm going to ask you to do something which is not very common in an English teaching seminar, but I'm going to ask you to write in Spanish, okay? And that's partly because I believe that sometimes it's positive for us as language teachers to put the English to one side, particularly when we're reflecting on our own practice. Maybe we can feel a little bit more comfortable or fluent or just descriptive if we use our first language, okay? So on this occasion, of course, I mean, if English is your first language, then of course use English, but use your first language. For most of you, I think that's Spanish, so that you feel like able to completely express yourself without any hindrance, okay? And remember, you're going to describe your teaching. So imagine that you want to describe your teaching to someone who wants to know what it's like to be in your classroom. Okay, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do that that's individually. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the shared document, and then you can start writing now. We'll come back in 5 minutes, guys.
Hello, Professor Lowe.
Yes, Itania.
Could you leave the
You'd like me to leave? Yeah, of course I can. Sure, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
I will
Just
ask the same. Thank you.
Just pay attention to the first paragraph at this stage, okay?
Okay.
So I have about 2 minutes left, guys. Okay, guys. I hope you have managed to write a few notes there. So who would like to comment on how it felt to describe your own teaching like that? How did you feel?
Professor?
Yes, teacher.
John Thomas.
Hi there, Joan.
Okay. I hope this is what you mean. I was saying what I like to use in my classes. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I put collaboration, the student work together. Okay. And I
Okay.
also
But, sorry, teacher. What I'm interested. Sorry, right now I'm just interested to know how you felt describing your own teaching. Is that something that you do a lot, thinking or describing your own teaching?
Is that something I do what?
Is it something you do a lot to think about or describe your teaching?
Okay.
Okay, I can hardly hear you, but
Okay, let
I
me
am
ask the question again.
describing-
Maybe you can hear
I
better
am
this time.
trying to describe things that I use in my classroom. I thought that was what
Okay, so right now, what I'm asking you, teacher, is to share with us how it felt when you were writing the description of your teaching. Is that something that is natural to you? You do it a lot, or did it feel a bit strange to be writing about
I
your own
see.
teaching?
I see. No, it didn't feel strange, and that's something I do a lot, but it was just natural for me to do it.
Okay,
it was
very good.
natural. It came in natural for me to describe the different things that I like to do in my classroom.
Yeah. And are you a teacher with a lot of experience?
Well, somewhat.
You don't have to give a number if you don't want to, but so I mean, you know, what I suppose I'm asking here is, earlier I was saying, you know, there's a difference between time and actually reflecting on your work. So would you say that you're a teacher that does reflect on your own teaching?
My teaching reflects on what?
Do you reflect about your teaching?
Oh yes, oh yes. I do that all the time. Almost every day when I teach, did I do that right? Well, I might have to fix something. I mean, not after I do it and think about it, maybe I said, no, I should have done it differently. So I'm always reflecting, and each day what I do in class, I may do it differently, slightly different next time. I don't know.
So for you, it was perfectly normal to describe your own teaching.
It was actually more what?
It was perfectly normal for you.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
figure yes.
Thank you very much, teacher. How about anybody else?
I've been having difficulty hearing, but I'm so sorry. This never happened before. But
Okay, well,
this time I'm having
hear,
a problem.
You can hear okay now?
I can hear you,
Yes.
but sometimes there's muffling. I don't think there's muffling in your speak, which I think is the
Is everybody else
internet.
hearing me clearly? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so maybe it's something to do with your speakers, teacher Joan.
Could be, but I don't know. First time it's happening, so.
Okay, all right. Well, let's hope
I'm so sorry.
Let's hope that problem goes away. Would anybody else like to share how it felt to write? Yes, teacher Karen.
Me, okay. Okay, I would like to say, when somebody asked me about if I have the opportunity to stay in your class, how will you teach me or something like that, I just say, okay, when I'm in a class, first of all, you have to forget that you're my friend, because you have to respect, and also you have to I try to organize a good environment in class, try to sharing, try to, also you have to smile about your mistakes. When you commit a mistake, you have to smile about it, because if you don't smile, I will smile about you, because they say, why will you smile about me? And I say, okay, when I learned English here, I learned here in Panama with American people, with some friends. I learned English on the street with some friends that come from different countries. And I remember when I started to learn the language that I made a mistake with the adjective and the noun, because it's totally different in Spanish and English. And I said, okay, and they smile about me a lot. You don't have an idea. You love to laugh about people. And so I say, okay, so now you smile, I smile a lot. Please tell me how the correct way to do it, how the correct way to tell the pronunciation, or yeah, I know adjective qualified a noun, thank you, something like that. So for that reason, I set my example to my friends or any person that would like to learn English with me in a class. And I said, okay, first of all, you have to forget that you age, because when you're learning a new language, you're like, it is like a game. So imagine that you are like a boy or like a girl, and you are trying to build the vocabulary. So it is like that.
Okay.
It is like that. So it is not like you will say like just sitting over there serious. And I'm teaching, and I was talking. No, of course, everybody, if I have 40 students in class, of course, all the 40 students, I try that they talk. And they say like, oh, okay. Because always they think that I never ask them. But of course, I love to observe them when they're in class. And when they're in a class, some of them are like, please, I can read their minds. They're like, please, don't say my name, don't say my name. So those people that I'm looking in that way, so I say, hey, please, could you answer to me this? They say, teacher, I don't know how to do it. And I say, okay, don't worry, just relax. Just relax, because Karen Arango didn't babble in English or didn't cry in English. So, and this is my second language. This is not my first language, and I'm not native neither. So the thing is that you have to try to go ahead and learn in a happy way.
Okay.
Is what I said.
So making the experience fun and light-hearted is important for you.
Yes.
So
Yes.
what I would like to do now is do like the next step, but I would like to do it like instead of going to breakout rooms, I would like to have some volunteers who can maybe do it in front of the rest of the class, or the group rather. So I think this thing about describing your own teaching, you know, is a very good exercise, and you may be surprised how your description might change. So if you were to do this in 2 months' time, you may find that you are emphasizing different things, and it makes you aware of how your own view of your own teaching is perhaps changing. So, Teacher Sharon, you were offering to participate a moment ago.
Okay.
So what I would like to do now, let's imagine that you and Teacher Erica are colleagues. Okay, you work together.
Me, Karen and Erica, yes?
No, Teacher Sharon and Teacher Erica.
Sharon and Erica. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay, so Teacher Sharon, you're going to share with Teacher Erica some of your description. And Erica, as you listen, I would like you to either ask questions to try to get Sharon to expand or justify what she said, or if you prefer, you could give a comment. So try to ask, 3 or 4 questions, or 3 or 4 comments. Teacher Sharon, did you write in Spanish?
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
forgot.
that's
I
fine.
did it in English.
You did
said
it in
that.
English. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. It's your decision. All I wanted to say is that language teachers sometimes feel that they should always do everything to do with their professional development in English. And I'm not sure whether that's actually really the case. I think that when we're really analyzing our own teaching, sometimes there is value in doing it in our own language, because maybe we can really express everything in exactly the way we want to. I'm not saying that your English isn't good enough to do it in English. I'm just saying it's natural that you feel more like free in your own language. So, okay, that's fine. You chose to do it in English, so you go ahead. And Erica, if you could listen and ask some questions or comments.
Can I interrupt, or I should do it at the end?
Interrupt.
Okay.
Okay, when I read opening your classroom, okay, I began thinking about connecting first with my students, then to direct or to give instructions. Okay, so that's a way that I always try to open each class. Okay, having that that first time of having that communication with them. Take my time.
What kind of communication do you usually use?
Okay, I try always to ask them how they feel, what they expect to learn from this subject. Okay, so they can have first a communication before I begin giving instructions. So I, in that way, think that I first break the ice, and then we continue activating the knowledge until we get to the session where they take the environment of the classroom and they start doing their tasks. Okay, I always try to do that.
How do you make your students to be involved? What do you tell them?
What do I tell?
What do you do to involve your students? So if there is a student there that doesn't want to do anything, he's tired, he hasn't eaten.
Okay, well, yes, first I begin with those who really want to participate, and then I notice how interested are the rest, and I continue with the ones that have something to say. And I also, if I have to ask names, I may. Okay, so all the class participate, or at least say something. Of course, there will be students who would never want to say anything, but if they know that maybe the teacher could call their names, they may try to pay a bit of attention.
Thank you. How did you find that, teacher Erica? Did you find it useful to you?
Well, I think I thought the other way. I didn't think of the description as my normal class.
Okay.
It is something that I usually do when I begin as a course. Mm-hmm. You know, it's describing how I'm gonna develop, or how am I thought it in my reflective as me, how do I do my classes.
Okay, so let's change roles now. You tell Sharon, and Sharon, this time, if you could listen and try to ask her questions or offer any comments that you think would be like interesting for her.
I don't know if that, because it's different than Sharon's, but
okay, you go ahead. Both are valid.
I usually start my classes, or I let my students know that, first of all, I love English. So I would like them to love English too, right? And I really enjoy when they participate, when they learn, right? And when they start using the language. That's how I describe my classes and my teaching. I'm always worried for my students' learning, not for the grade. right? Of course, you know, they need to pass, but I'm always worried about, because all the students are not in the same level, right? So there are students that may get hundreds, but there are others that got 60, but then they start getting 70s and 80s, you know, increasing. I'm responsible, so I want my students to be responsible too. And I reflect that I know.
Okay,
that
Erica.
I can improve.
Erica, how do you work with the students who are not responsible? You are responsible, you expect from them to be responsible, but there are some who don't want to be.
Yeah, well, there is motivation then from me, or now that we have learned metacognition, then I need to use that for them to learn that they need to be motivated in order to progress, right?
What motivation would you use with them?
Sometimes they are shy, as they have low level of English, they are shy. So I go work with them by themselves first. So I made them be involved with the other classmates, because sometimes the students are shy to speak to because they don't like to make mistakes, or that others make fun of what they say or what they do. So I try to speak aloud with that student and find out what is happening, because we need to know what is happening with that student, as we have discussed here, right? Professor Manuel mentioned one time that that kid may not have eaten, or, you know. So I believe that lack of motivation is due to several things that we professors usually don't take the time to ask our students and to know, right? But that's the way I try to motivate it, right? And I force the students to be involved in somehow, being there, being close, asking that student.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we had two nice examples there of teachers sharing insights into their classroom and having a constructive friend to ask questions and to ask them for more details. So one thing we have to realize, guys, is that, I mean, of course, seminars like this are a great opportunity to maybe learn about new things and to broaden our horizons. But professional development does not always need to be so formal or so structured. Professional development can take place over a cup of coffee with a colleague, okay? And often just making time to describe to each other, you know, what you're trying to do, or explain why you're trying to do, and hearing some reactions from your colleagues can be a really, really enriching experience. Would anybody like to share, like, is that something that they do, like, in their normal school or life, like, you know, talking about their practice with peers? Teacher Manuel.
Good afternoon to everyone. Well, I'm going to tell you my personal experience at the school where I work.
Okay.
We are 10 teachers.
Yep.
And maybe three teachers, we work on the same level, let's say 11 graders.
Okay.
Every week we sit down, we have an agenda of things that we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And every week we sit down and we discuss, what did you do? What was left over? What we need to improve?
Mm-hmm.
And when we finish at the end of the month, we make a report and we give it to the coordinator.
Mm.
So we have evidence of what we are going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But English teachers,
mm-hmm.
we have to learn to share.
Mm.
Okay. Sometimes, well, I don't want you to know what I am doing, but we have to learn to communicate among each others. We have to learn that we are a team. We are not island. We have to share. Many times we could be making mistakes and we don't know. And maybe another colleague will tell you, no, Manuel, or maybe no, Falques, I will do it this way. So sometimes we have to learn to accept advice or recommendation from other colleagues. We have to learn to be humble. Okay, this is a profession in which humbleness, even with teachers and students, it's important. I am not better than any other. Yeah, I am just a simple human and I am willing to do my work the best I can. I understand that I can make mistake, but if you see that I am making mistake, feel free to call me and let me know. Yeah, I will really appreciate when someone or a colleague do this. Okay.
And I think, you know, you talked about humility. I think it's also important that this should be cooperative, right? So instead of saying, Teacher Manuel, you're wrong, you know, your attitude towards error correction that you described, that's wrong. No, that's not how it works. What we should be doing is sharing our own approaches and maybe in a gentle way questioning each other, but not attacking each other, right? Not saying that you're wrong and I'm right, but rather, okay, well, you're more likely.
I'm sorry, maybe I used the wrong word. Okay, I am open to accept advice, constructive advice. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I wasn't correcting what you said. I was just more like adding to it. Like, I just think it's important that when you have these types of interactions with colleagues that, okay, everybody shares what they do. And you know what? You're more likely to positively influence somebody just by saying, well, you know, this is what I do and this is why I do it, rather than you're wrong, I'm right, right? Your people are much more likely to consider your advice if you just offer it as, okay, well, maybe you could try this, okay? Thank you very much, teacher. Does anybody else would anybody else like to share about any like interactions they have with colleagues about their practice?
Yes, me, Professor Law.
Hi, Teacher Osiris, go ahead.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
First of all, I wish to have a colleague like Professor Manuel, really, because it is very hard to find colleagues that really wants to help you or work together. Sometimes I feel on you know, the places I already work in the past, some colleague can be very, very, I don't want to say anything, you know, like it's not correct.
Don't worry, they're not here now. You can say what you think.
Sometimes I feel that they are selfish with their acknowledge of certain methodology or advices, as Professor Manuel said. And I don't know why, because we're supposed to be working for the same place. We're supposed to be working for the goods of the students. Okay? And well, in my case, I always tried to be very dynamic teacher. I started back on the 2000 and I stopped for a little while, and then I returned to the profession. And it is very different now from then, because in my case, I was very, very restricted. Can I say that word? You know, like
restricted, did you say?
Yes, I always like, you know.
Could I just ask, could you explain to us what context you work in, teacher?
You mean the subjects?
No, what, like, do you work at high school, primary, university?
Well, both of them. I used to work since preschool until 12th grade, and different school also, you know, officials and private school. And
A whole range.
Yes, and then, you know, talking about the methodology, sometimes it's hard to see which one is best for depending of the grades. Okay, because some school want you to work with this methodology. The other one wants you to try this one. And it's kind of hard sometimes. But at the end of the year, we find or we see that the best thing is to see our student that they have learned from you.
Yeah, absolutely. If I could just interrupt one moment, Teacher Manuel. Are you there, teacher?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Yeah, so Teacher Osiris was just expressing her regret that she doesn't have such cooperative colleagues as you. Can I ask, you know, these meetings that you described, was that something that the three of you mentioned? There were 3 people, including yourself, right?
Yeah. Well,
So
just a minute. We are 10 teachers, 10 English teachers at the same school.
Right, but 3
students,
for the same level.
Yeah, for the same levels.
Okay, and can I ask, the meeting that you described that you have every week, was that something that the 3 of you just decided to do, or was it something that your coordinator told you to do?
It's a coordination meeting for the 10 teachers. Every Tuesday at 5 p.m. we have that meeting.
Okay.
For half an hour. And in half an hour, we sit down and we discuss what we're going to do during the coming week, the week.
But you do that on a grade level, right?
Yes, on a grade level. Okay. We even show each other. Well, I am using the books, and this I just covered these pages. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes there are situations that you were not able to finish. So you have to put a check mark. Maybe you will have to go back and try and see how you make up until you reach where the other teacher is going to.
So what you're describing is more like a meeting about the progress that's being made in the program. But what about, do you also reflect on how you're teaching, different methods, techniques that you're using?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
And do you think that's that's also happening during the coordination meeting?
Yeah. And sometimes when we meet, maybe on Thursday, hey, how is it going? Well, everything is going okay. Good. Okay. So we talk more about it on Tuesday. Yeah.
So Teacher Osiris, going back to you, would you feel grateful if your coordinator kind of made it obligatory that you should have a meeting for half an hour to talk about, you know, your methodology or problems that you're encountering in the classroom? Or do you think that that would be like too artificial, and you think it would only really work if it was like a natural thing that happens between you?
Oh, no, I think that is a great idea, because that is a time when, if you have any doubt about something, that is a time where you can speak and make all those questions that you are not sure, you know? And especially when you have new schools. If you're working at the new schools, that happens a lot. Because in my case, I always work like eventual places, you know? Or,
so you would appreciate having like an official meeting, which is like obligatory, where teachers are encouraged to share problems or talk about, you know, different things they're trying out.
Oh, sure, yes, definitely.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So there's kind of 2 kind of ends of the continuum, right? One is the kind of meeting that Teacher Manuel is describing, which is something that the school has mandated. It's still a valuable opportunity to share, you know, problems and give each other advice. And then there's the more kind of like voluntary situation where maybe a teacher says, Teacher Tanya, you're free in the second period on Tuesday. So am I. Shall we have a coffee and talk about our work? You know, and maybe that also has certain benefits when teachers, it's not something they have to do, it's something they choose to do. Teacher Tanya, do you have like that kind of relationship with any of your colleagues where you get together not because you have to, but because you want to?
Okay, good evening, colleagues. Well, actually, that's a situation that I don't see where I work, thanks to the Lord. But if a colleague needs like some advice or something, we are so free to speak one to the other that I will go to her and ask her, and definitely she will give me whatever hints I need, and so do I. So we don't have that meeting like at a department, like an English department meeting to decide whatever we're gonna give to the student. But we are free to decide, okay? We use the program or whatever, but we are free to use our style. But if I need some word from one of them, we are only 3 English teachers, right? I will go to her, she will tell me, and so, you know, likewise, we don't have that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to make like an effort to actually meet with colleagues. You know, you can't do it with all colleagues, but you know the ones you get along with, and really just try to have half an hour a week where you just sit down and you talk about your teaching and you share practices and ideas. And that can be really valuable professional development. Like I said, professional development does not have to be courses or seminars. It can be a half an hour chat over a cup of coffee. So, you know, I encourage you all to see your colleagues as potential, you know, agents of change, and having that developing that relationship and sharing ideas and helping to suggest solutions to problems. That can be a really enriching way of reflecting and improving your own practice.
Professor.
Only one more thing, teacher, professor, is that we need more English teacher though. We need more English teacher, and they had the program Panama Bilingue, and I was so happy when they sent like 6 more English teachers to us, but they dropped the program now, so we are only 3, struggling with a lot of students because I have 10 groups. So yeah, so what we do meanwhile, let's say last year I had 1st and 2nd. Now this year I have 2nd and 3rd. I'm sorry, 3rd and 4th. And next year I might have 4th and 5th. And we go around until, so we have that chance to, okay, what you did last year, where do you stay and stuff like that. But we try to do it in a very happy mood and make everything work, because we need more teachers.
Yeah, I'm sure. Teacher, thank you, Teacher Tanya. Teacher Zuleika.
Okay, in my case, yes, we have some meetings every Wednesday, but also we join before the trimester, and we discuss the planning. For the planning, we design the planning together, and also the activities. During the trimester, we share some photocopies with some activities. So we exchange a lot of information. We help each other. And also, as you mentioned, we have a close relation, not with all English teachers, but if we are in the same level, we work together. But after that, we go to the cafeteria and we discuss. If we have something related to teaching, we discuss it together, you know, eating something, etc. But at all, yes, some of us want to share, maybe others not, but we respect that, because sometimes some people prefer to work alone. But if we have the material, we share.
Very good.
This is the way that we work.
Okay. Thank you for your intervention. So I'd just like to look at this commentary from the book. Remember, this is the Inside Teaching book. This is one of the tasks where you write a description, and then as teacher Sharon and Erica had like a interaction where they commented or questioned each other. And this is the commentary from the book. So classrooms have often been characterized as black boxes because once the door is shut and the lesson starts, no one outside has any idea what goes on inside. But it may be that even we ourselves as teachers don't really know what goes on. And the task of articulating what kinds of places our classrooms are may help us to force our awareness of how we see our classrooms and perhaps where our blind spots are. This awareness may be thrown into sharper relief by being reflected off another person. It may also be a way into literally opening the classroom door and inviting someone else to report their impressions of what they see. We believe that being observed can be one of the most fruitful experiences for a teacher engaged in professional development. And we will explore this possibility in chapter 3. So you can see that the authors are making the case that developing a relationship with a fellow teacher and then encouraging maybe that teacher to come and observe. So here, now we're talking about observation. So having a relationship with a colleague who you trust and who you have a good relationship with, and you can have these kinds of discussions, and then you can ask them to actually come into your class and offer you some feedback. So rather than just having a conversation, it then transitions to the classroom. Okay, so one very important aspect of reflection is to think about your teaching philosophy. When we think about our teaching philosophy, it's basically the beliefs and the assumptions that we are working on, right? So for example, here are some examples. I always correct learners' errors. I talk as little as possible in lessons so that the learners have as much opportunity to speak as possible. I always ask my learners to speak in complete sentences. Now, these are comments that some teachers have made. I think it's a waste of time for learners to do lengthy writing exercises in the classroom. I gave up drilling years ago. Okay, who can explain what is drilling, guys? Any idea?
Like telling the students what to do, give them some time to okay, like drilling to me is like giving directions. So stop giving directions, something like that.
Okay. Okay, so what drilling means, teacher, is basically choral repetition. Okay, so for example, this is, you know, something that if you walked into a classroom 100 years ago, they did all the time, and some teachers still do it. I personally believe that it is a good thing to do, because I believe that students generally feel safer when they're doing something in a group. So to help them develop their pronunciation, instead of saying it on their own, they repeat it with the rest of the class. So drilling is like, you could drill a word, or you could drill a sentence. Okay, so you could. Yes,
it comes from the audiolingual method.
Right.
Drilling.
Right.
Repetition. Yeah.
Yes.
So a synonym for drilling could be repetition.
Choral repetition.
Choral repetition.
Yeah.
Yeah. The important thing is that everybody, I mean, yeah, I suppose that there are different ways of drilling. So for example, one thing I like to do is, let's say I'm doing going to, okay? So I might say, I'm going to make a pizza. So they say, I'm going to make a pizza. And then I say, visit my mother. And they have to say, I'm going to visit my mother. So I don't necessarily say the whole thing. I give them a new word, and then they come back with the structure, okay? You could drill the whole thing. I'm going to visit my mother. I'm going to visit my mother. And then you can say, okay, now the boys, I'm going to visit my mother. Now the girls, I'm going to visit my mother. Now the students on the left side, I'm going to visit my mother. Now the ones on the right, I'm going to visit my mother. So it's kind of like fun, but the good thing is that everybody is practicing at the same time. And so there's a phrase in English, safety in numbers, right? when you are part of a group, you generally feel less, because you're not exposed. So drilling is something which some teachers regard as like a thing of the past and you shouldn't do it anymore. Like I just said, personally, I think is a good thing to do. So this teacher is saying, I gave up drilling years ago. I use authentic materials as much as possible. I don't explain meaning, I illustrate it. I don't show learners how to spell a word until they've heard it and practiced pronouncing it. I don't like to allow silences of more than a few seconds during classes. I always try to elicit from learners first rather than giving them language. This word elicit is very important. It means to try to prompt the learners to say something. So usually what teachers do when they want to elicit is they give clues, right? And rather than giving them the word, you try to make them say it by giving them clues. I use a lot of songs and games to lighten the atmosphere on Fridays. I don't use translation, and I don't allow my learners to use their mother tongue during class. I make sure everyone in the class can say the word or sentence being practiced before I move on to the next point. I always stand and I never sit. Okay, so here, guys, we have a whole range of beliefs that teachers have. And what I want you to do now is basically you're going to rate these statements on a scale of 1 to 3. Okay, so let me just show you. I have a worksheet for you. Okay. This is what the worksheet looks like. So if you completely agree with the statement, I want you to put a 1. If you partially agree, I want you to put 2. If you don't agree at all, I want you to put 3. Okay? So this is a very interesting way to conduct reflection on your teaching philosophy. What you could do is invite maybe 5 colleagues to write sentences similar to this, like give opinions about teaching, all right? And then do a similar exercise. Think about the statements. Do you agree with them or not? And then have a discussion to compare your answers. This can be a very, very helpful activity to make you consider what your position is, but not only define it, but to explore it and justify it. Okay? So let me just quickly upload this worksheet to your Google Classroom. I'm doing the promoting self-regulated learning first. Okay, so for those of you in the seminar for this week, I have just posted. And for the diploma course, it's going now. Okay, can everybody check their Google Classroom, please?
I don't see mine.
Should be, just try now. Refresh the page.
Yes, it's there.
Okay. So guys, I'm going to give you about 8 minutes to complete that. So on each line, enter the number 1, 2, or 3. Okay. So you have about 30 seconds. Hang on a minute. About 30 seconds per.
I'm not.
per
I
sentence.
don't see the room invitation.
You don't see what? Sorry, Teacher Francia?
The room invitation. The invitation.
No, this is not a breakout room. This is just individual work right now.
Because yesterday and day before yesterday, you sent something that I have to write yes to get access to the classroom.
Yeah. So
But not today. It's not shown.
okay, to get access to the Google Classroom, you should you should be able to access that. Do you not have the link?
No, let me just get in the
Into the Google. Yeah.
Okay,
Go to your Google.
That what you have to do is that you were sent it to your email. So go to your email and then go to the corner where there is the Google Suite, and then there you access through your Google Classroom.
Okay.
Just click on the icon that says Google Classroom, and then you're going to find it. Okay.
I now finally. I
Got
get
it. You see?
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Right, guys. So if we'll just work in silence for another 5 or 6 minutes. Remember, 1 means you totally agree, 2 you partially agree, and 3 you don't agree at all.
Don't move, Chanel.
Okay, guys, 2 more minutes. 2 more minutes. Don't worry if you're a little bit behind, just finish the ones you can. Okay, guys, welcome back. So I hope that answering those statements made you think a little bit and maybe explore your own beliefs about those different areas. So, you know, with teacher reflection, it's not just reflecting about our classes, but also reflecting on our assumptions and beliefs. And I think that, so there's value in doing this kind of thing on your own, but I think there's even more value in then interacting with other colleagues and sharing your different perspectives on these things. So what I would like to do now is to place you in breakout rooms and go through as many as you can in the time I'm going to give you. I mean, if you end up having a very heated debate about only 1 or 2, that's fine. Or if you prefer just to give like a short, you know, defense of your ideas, that's also fine. But try to exchange your beliefs and ask each other, you know, why you think that, or to try to give more information so that you can try to understand each other's points of view. This can be a very, very enriching activity to learn about other people's assumptions and then question our own in relation to those, okay? So basically, we're now going to discuss our answers and give more kind of information to each other to explain why we think that, okay? So how many participants? We have 44. So I'm going to open 12 rooms. Okay, guys, if you could join your rooms now, and I'll see you in 10 minutes. Discuss as many of those points as you could, okay? Thank you.
Hi, I got an internet problem. I just got reconnected. Could I get an invitation to the small groups, please? And my excuses, okay? Okay, thank you, I got it, thank you.
Hi, teacher Aileen Wong. Can you hear me? Teacher Aileen Wong, can you hear me? Teacher Veronica? Or teacher?
Yes.
See, what is our policy on teachers that do not answer when we speak to them? Should we put them out of the room or just leave them?
Yeah, we have been putting them in the waiting room.
Yeah.
Because we can understand, at least I can understand why, if they are behind the.
I mean, you know, I can understand they might drop out and then come back, and then obviously we move them. Like teacher Esteban Romero, can you hear me, teacher Esteban? Teacher Esteban?
I hear you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi there,
yes.
teacher. Were you connected before?
If I connected.
Were
yes.
you connected before, or is this the first time?
Yes, I connected before.
Okay. Were you in a breakout room? Do you remember the number of the breakout room you were in?
No.
No. Okay, I'm going to put you into a breakout room 9, okay?
Okay.
If you can accept that.
Okay.
You need to click on join, teacher Esteban.
Professor Aileen, Professor Wong, can you hear us? Professor
No.
Wong?
Should I put in the waiting room?
Yeah, you may.
Okay. Tal vez una sugerencia, no sé, es obviamente decisión de ustedes, pero durante la sesión, si tuviéramos una lista de los participantes y pudiéramos indicar aquellos que no estaban contestando en el momento de, porque me da la impresión de que hay algunos compañeros que solo se conectan y están haciendo otras cosas, y realmente no es así, ¿verdad? Para una experiencia de desarrollo profesional. Posiblemente, si tuviéramos una política así, podríamos frenar ese tipo de comportamiento.
Mercedes, yo creo que la profesora
Dígame.
Marisol le había pedido el listado a Irikel, pero no estoy segura que si ya se lo proporcionó.
Ok, le voy a hacer la consulta. Estaba viendo que la profesora Wong acaba de entrar. No sé si era que tenía problemas de conexión. No sé si pueda comunicarse ahorita.
Aileen, Teacher Aileen, can you hear us?
Permiso, voy a hacer la consulta.
Okay. Teacher Wong, can you hear us?
Y tal vez si tuviéramos los números de celular en la lista de asistencia, like during a breakout room, we can call them and ask them what's happening.
Yeah. I'm going to see if I can send her a private chat and see if she answers.
Hola, profesora Verónica.
Ajá, dígame.
Le vamos a hacer llegar el listado a la profesora Marisol en este momento.
Ok, gracias.
Estamos a la orden.
I am writing to her, but she's not responding. So I don't know. Mm-mm.
Okay, welcome back, everybody.
I did not finish. Well,
Welcome back.
Okay, so don't worry that you didn't finish. The idea is just that you get a little taste of what it's like, okay? But I'd be interested to hear some comments about how did you find the activity? Did you think it was, did it make you question, or did it make you think about different aspects of teaching?
Sure. Very reflecting.
Great.
Very much. I'm going to put that in practice in my school.
So what was one of the sentences that you had a particularly interesting conversation about, teacher Javier?
Like, I think it's a waste of time for learners to do lengthy writing exercises in the classroom.
Okay,
Yeah,
where did you
agree.
stand on that one?
Well, okay, I said it depends on the particular way of teaching. It depends on the grade you're teaching, and it depends on the activity, and it also depends on the environment. So if I'm teaching 12 graders, well, I will have them have some writing activity, but not that long. If I'm teaching first graders, the writing will be definitely short, pretty short. So it depends on the grades we're teaching at.
Okay, so definitely your answer will be dependent on your context. That's totally true. Teacher Teresa.
Tell me.
What about you? Which one did you think was particularly like enriching to discuss?
Well, it was correct learners' errors. We in group we were discussing that it's depend on the way that we did it. We were not agree. We do not agree about this because we think that we can make it in different ways. If they are presenting a speech, as professor, we can take notes about their mistakes at the end of their presentation. We can write a list of words that they maybe mispronounced or the mistake that they did, and explain them in a general way. In that way, the students are not going to feel afraid to participate in class.
Okay, so you're talking, what you're describing, I think, is what we call delayed error correction, where instead of correcting the student on the spot when they make the mistake, you make a note of it, and then you bring it up at the end of the class.
Yes, exactly. And the other way can be, the way that we can do it immediately is while you are explaining a class or a topic, and maybe when they participate in class and say something that is not correct, you as a teacher can repeat what the students have said, but in a correct way. Yes, in order that they realize what they mispronounce badly, or.
So what you're describing there is what we call reformulation, where you reformulate what the learner said, but you correct the error.
Yes, like the professor did in the video that you show us on Tuesday, I think.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, error correction is a really interesting thing. I mean, some people say, you know, you should never correct somebody in the moment, but I have a slightly different, I'd just like to share my belief on this. To me, it depends whether the activity is controlled practice or free practice. So, for example, let's imagine we are studying the past tense, right? And we're working on 10 verbs, and we have the present and then we have the past, and they have to create a sentence using the verb in the past. Now, if the student makes a mistake at that point, I think it is necessary to correct, because at that point, we're talking about controlled practice. In other words, what we're trying to do is develop accuracy, right? But if a student is talking more naturally and just expressing their ideas, then at that point, it's not a good idea to correct them, because then we could demotivate or we could make them feel humiliated. So I think it, you know, like teacher Javier used the word, it depends. And I think that in teaching, the word depends is very, very important, right? Because we have to make our decision depending on the particular stage of the class or the particular moment that it happens, right? Yeah, thank you. One more person. How about teacher Cynthia? Can you hear me okay, teacher Cynthia? Hi, teacher Cynthia. Okay, teacher Cynthia's maybe having a few connectivity issues. How about teacher Katia? Are you with us, teacher Katia?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, teacher. So tell me, which of those statements did you find that you had an enriching discussion about?
Well, we didn't finish as a group, but the first one that we did together, we agree on the majority of them. We were talking about drilling, and we said that drilling is important also, depending on, also because we're talking about our students, they really need to open their mouths and really repeat
because at least they are doing something themselves and also producing language. This is something that some of them missed, producing language. Because as we were saying yesterday, they are more receptive than active sometimes. So drilling is an opportunity for them to produce language, maybe not the way we would like to, but at least they are doing something. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, go ahead. I've muted the other person. Can you unmute yourself now, Teacher Katia? I had to mute everybody, so if you could unmute yourself, Teacher Katia.
Sorry, Professor Daniel, I didn't hear you because I was talking at the same moment. I just
Okay, go ahead. So you were talking about drilling, right?
Yes. I was talking about drilling, and for example, something that also talk as little as possible in lessons. This is like something that we all hope as teachers, but we really need to give opportunity also because we need to guide them. We need to model, and so we need to talk. So
absolutely,
we're talking about that we need a balance. We cannot go to the extremes, right? So as little as possible would be like the ideal things to do.
What do you, if you had to define, Teacher Katia, like, let's imagine that we divide a class like in terms of percentage. What percentage of the class do you think that the teacher should be speaking, and what percentage should the students be speaking?
Okay, we're talking about language classes.
Yes.
Our goal is that more students talk than teacher talk.
Okay.
But we need to see the reality that we're facing. We need to see the context. We need to take into consideration students' level, because now, for example, I'm giving classes to a level 6 that they are upper intermediate, and I have to explain some things to them. But yesterday they did the majority of the talking. But I have a level 2, and it cannot be possible, right?
Well, you say that, but I mean, if you give them like heavily scaffolded activities,
oh yes,
then they can do that, you know, and that's still speaking. I mean, I think the most important thing to achieve a higher student participation is to have pair and group work. The more pair and group work we have, the more student participation, right?
Role plays. Oh yes.
Yeah, and it can be
starts, yes.
Yeah, it can be very scaffolded. So it could be you give them a sentence like, yesterday I went to the, and then they have to choose where they went. Like, so it doesn't have to, it could be very, very structured or scaffolded, but try to, you know, design activities that force the students to speak. That's the idea.
Yes,
yeah?
that's the idea. That's the idea. Also, I would like to know what my colleagues think about the use of translation in the classroom, because that is very challenging here in Panama. Some teachers don't allow their students to speak in their native language, and if they do, they like the class is not considered like, you know, like a good class. I disagree. But well, that's my point of
Yeah, that is probably the most contentious or controversial issue in our profession, I would say. If you want to cause a fight between English teachers, you just have to say, I think that it's okay to use L1 in an L2 classroom. Ah, no, what do you mean? You're crazy.
Yes.
So, but actually, Teacher Katia, there is a movement that has been developing for the last maybe 5 to 10 years, which really believes that using L1 in they will use the word judicious. In other words, using it in a principled way, not using it just, you know, for the sake of it, but using it for certain things. So, for example, at lower levels, it's good to use a little bit of Spanish when you're giving instructions to make sure the students understand. And often people do what's called sandwiching. So they say something in English, they say it in Spanish, then they say it in English again. And to reduce the students' affective filters, using Spanish or the L1 can also be a useful device. It's funny because we're, not all English language teaching situations are monolingual. You are in a monolingual situation where all of your learners are Spanish speakers. But imagine if you were an ESL teacher. So we are EFL teachers because we are teaching English in a country where English is not the mother tongue. But ESL is when you're teaching English to immigrants in an English-speaking country. So imagine if you're teaching English in the United States, you're going to have Spanish speakers, you're going to have people from Africa, people from Japan, people from China, people from all the corners of the world. And then you can't use the learners L1 because they all have different ones, right? So it's interesting that I think that if we are in a monolingual context, why not take advantage of the fact that we share a mother tongue and to use it in a judicious way? Two people have their hands up. Teacher Cynthia, are you there?
Just one thing.
Yes, Teacher Kathia.
Just to conclude it. First, I would like to ask you if you could share the name of the movement that you're saying, because it would be interesting to know more about it. Because
okay, the book about L1.
Yes.
Okay, during the break, I'm going. I think I have it. I think I have it on my bookshelf, but if not, I can find it on Google. So I'll give it to you after the break. Okay.
Yes. Thank you very much, Professor.
Teacher Cynthia.
Yes, Professor, you called me, but I was having something to eat.
Okay.
Because of my sugar.
Okay, no problem. I know what it's like.
Okay, tell me the question. What were you asking me about?
Yeah, I was just asking you which of those statements you had an interesting conversation in your breakout room about.
Okay, as a teacher, as an English teacher, I'm really interested in having my student learning the language, learning English. I always tell them, it doesn't matter if you mispronounce, because after you get the correction, but you have to try. So what caught my attention is B. I talk as little as possible in lessons so that the learners have as much opportunity to speak as possible. And since I teach ESP, this is a university level student, technical English, so I have them talking. They try their best, and that's what we want. We want them to use the language, and we know that sometimes it's not going to be perfect. They're not going to have a perfect pronunciation, but give them the opportunity to practice the language. So I try not to use so much Spanish, just little word, and that's it.
So at certain times, using Spanish is okay in your opinion, but you really try to maximize the English. Exactly. Yeah, so I think that you would agree with, there's a guy called Paul Nation. He's quite a famous author in our field. He's Australian, and he said, maximizing L2 does not mean eliminating L1, right? Maximizing L2 does not mean eliminating L1. So yes, of course, as English teachers, we should be maximizing the use of the target language, but that doesn't mean to say that we have to throw Spanish out of the window, right? Exactly. And another reason why using Spanish can be helpful, well, the L1, is because for time management, like if you want to explain something quickly, if you say it in the L1, they get it immediately. If you say it in English, you might have to repeat it 3 or 4 times until they understand. So, if you have a short time with your learners, it might be an intelligent decision to give certain explanations in Spanish. So I don't think that personally that, saying you should never speak the L1. I don't agree with that.
No. And positive when you're giving an explanation and you can observe their faces.
Yeah.
Their faces indicate that they are lost. They're not understanding anything. That is when you intervene and they will, okay, I'm going to switch
Going on, honey.
to Spanish a little bit and then
Yeah.
give the instructions and go back to English. I don't stay on Spanish.
Yes, although especially kids, the kids can be a little bit they can be a little bit sneaky. So yesterday I was observing a new teacher that's working at our school, and she was working with 6th grade. And I had given classes to 5th grade last year, so I knew the kids. And I was observing, and there were some of the kids in 6th grade, and they were like pretending they didn't understand anything. Oh, teacher, ¿qué? ¿Cómo? ¿Qué? And at the end of the class, I said to her, you know, they're playing you, because they do understand English, and they're playing with you. So we have to be. It's difficult with kids, you know, like obviously with adult learners, if they genuinely don't understand, you have to respond. But with kids, you have to be a little bit careful, because otherwise they can start taking advantage of you. Teacher Tanya.
Yes, I want to give you an analogy, but before I want to give my opinion about, using L1 and L2.
Okay.
In our environment, teaching environment, our teaching context, our schools are called bilingual. Centro Escolar Básica General Bilingüe. That means we have 2 languages. We had to use 2 languages. And if you're working with lower level students, you need to model in Spanish. Okay, you need to do it. And then you can provide them, it depends on how you scaffold, as you said, your lessons in speaking or listening, speaking, then reading, then writing. And maybe you have students speaking English fluently at the end, right? But then my analogy is about, I remember once I wanted to learn French. I was very old enough to decide to learn French. I went into the class and the professor was only speaking in French. And I was the only one not understanding anything, because all his students had a base. They came from, maybe from high school, giving French classes. I was from commerce. We don't give French. So when I was in the classroom and he started la ronde de la frayère, whatever words he was saying, I laughed because I didn't understand anything. And he never modeled neither in English or Spanish. And guess what happened? I draw from the class. I left it and I never learned French. Sometimes you need a little bit of that modeling in your L1 to understand, or to get the basic to understand the language. So imagine our students that don't have any backgrounds, their default language is Spanish. So imagine how are we not going to speak Spanish? That's my opinion.
Absolutely. And we talked in another session about rapport, right? And how important it is to make students feel safe. And, if they don't feel that they can trust the teacher, then, they're not going to be willing to take risks or participate in the class. So I think that, giving some reassurance in L1 is also part of establishing good rapport with the students, making them feel comfortable. But yeah, it's like anything in life, there is a fine balance, right? We have to maximize the use of English, but use Spanish when it's appropriate or when it's necessary. Okay, teacher Katia, you were asking about the book, and I just found it online. Let me just share with you. I just posted it on the Google.
Oh, great, from Cambridge.
Yeah, so it's called Translation and Own Language Activities.
Great.
Yeah.
It's in Google Classroom?
Say that again?
Is that in Google Classroom?
Yes, I just posted it.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you also for your recommendations
Yeah,
about how what can I do in order for the students in beginner levels to have the opportunity to speak, because you know, as English teacher, we always have like a desire for like they can speak like long sentences or more ideas. It's true that we have to, if I give them some control, a sentence that I can at the end. I did it the last class with my beginner level students, so I really need to encourage them to do more.
yeah. I think that those sentence starters can be very useful for scaffolding. Yeah. And, you know, here it says translation. We've been talking about using Spanish, but we haven't been talking so much about translation. I don't want to get too far off the topic of reflection, but one thing I'd just like to mention that has been very useful for me. In English, there are many words which we call them like delexicalized. I'm going to just put that in the chat. Delexicalized. Okay, so examples of delexicalized words are words like get or take or have. Okay, so why are they delexicalized? Because those words don't really have, you can't know the meaning of those words unless you see the context, right? So what a lot of students make the mistake of doing is thinking that have means tener, right? So they always translate have as tener. But actually, have can mean many things. So, for example, if I say, teacher Erica, if I say, have a good time, how would you translate that?
Pasar un buen rato.
So, pasar, not tener, right? Okay, teacher Osiris, if I said to you, I always have a coffee in the morning, how would you translate that into Spanish?
That I drink coffee in the morning, all mornings.
So in English, in Spanish, how would you say that? I always have a coffee.
Okay, the translation will be siempre tengo café en la mañana, but the right way
beber.
But that would not be a correct translation, would it, teacher? Because that's a direct translation. What would be the correct translation in Spanish?
Siempre me tomo una taza de café.
Siempre me tomo una taza de café. Okay. Okay. So you can see there that the word have in one context means pasarla bien. In another context, it means tomar or beber. Okay. In certain cases, it might mean tener, right? But what I like to do with my learners is give them, obviously at a certain level, maybe a low intermediate level, give them like 10 meanings, 10 sentences or phrases, collocations with have, and get them to translate them. And they realize, wow, you know, because I choose carefully those words, wow, each word, we translate it differently in Spanish. So that can actually be a really enriching learning moment for the student, that they realize that you cannot translate, that you cannot say tener, have means tener. It depends on the context, okay?
Professor, one example that I would like to address is when we have a student saying ages. They used to, in Spanish, we used to say, I am, yo tengo 40 años, yo tengo 20 años. So they use the verb have instead of using I am and I have. That is a correct mistake for beginners. So now that you're making that, usually we'll teach them how to use I am when we have to say, okay, tengo calor. You don't have to say I'm hot. You have to say I'm hot. Oh, I'm cold. Tengo frío, estoy resfriado, right? So they
could give them all kinds of examples, right? Where where you use the verb to be instead of, so tengo frío, tengo calor, tengo hambre, tengo sed.
Right.
Tengo rabia.
Yeah.
Professor, excuse me, could you repeat the term that you used for this kind of words?
Yeah, it's in the chat, Teacher Suri. It's delexicalized words. Delexicalized. Okay. Yes, Teacher Osiris.
Yes, that is because one will be the regular translation, but the other one is the meaning of using the verb in this case, right?
But what we have to make students understand is what you refer to as the regular translation is not really correct, right? Because we have to, when we are translating something, we have to use the correct word in the other language, right? We cannot translate literally.
Yes.
We have to have that knowledge that you actually say it in a different way. Yeah.
Professor, in that same way, I usually teach them false cognates and true cognates. Yeah, it's something similar to this that you're explaining, right? Because they say, okay, for example, the word arena, that it has a different meaning in English language from Spanish language. So sometimes they get confused using the word because they have different meaning in context, right? So I always try to teach them false cognates and true cognates, right? For example, one common example is about getting embarrassed. People think that it is like a embarazado, right? But it is not in that way. It's to be exposed and to make mistakes from the peoples and you get embarrassed, something like that. So I try to contrast the two languages, for beginners, using the false cognates and true cognates and using these principles. Now the words that you have saying, I like it. I was doing something like that. Sometimes we ignore the name.
The thing is, it's natural to think in your first language, right? But what we've got to try to help learners understand is you cannot translate literally. You cannot say, and so what you need them to understand is you should never say that a particular word means a particular thing. The meaning is completely dependent on the context. Okay?
Professor.
Yes, Teacher Suleika.
Okay. For example, something enjoyable for translation is about saying. Students, they need to see not just the content, but also culture.
Okay. Did you say sayings?
Yes, saying or idiomatic expressions.
Yeah.
So this is funny because they are trying to look in Spanish what is the meaning. So they enjoy that, but also in Panama, we have different provinces and other regions, and they are trying to look for the best things for one saying, and I say, okay, but in this place, we understood that, etc., etc. But this is good for translation because in that way you are teaching idiomatic phrases that sometimes is hard for us because we need to understand. This is not word by word, as you mentioned, it's not literally, but there is a meaning behind that, but also culture. That is really important too. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So, I mean, one activity that I think is really good is when you listen, when you hear these errors that your students are making, make an activity, okay, where you write 5 sentences with false cognates or literal translations. So write things like, I have 18 years old, yeah? Or I don't know, I've never understood this, but I don't know if you've noticed this, but a lot of students, when they're writing in English, they say, I take breakfast at 8 o'clock. In Spanish, do you say, yo tomo el desayuno? I've never heard anybody say that. So I don't understand why they say, I take breakfast. You don't say in Spanish, you don't say in English. It's always been, a strange one that for me, but I have breakfast. How would you translate that into Spanish? I have breakfast at 7 o'clock.
We have a verb, desayunar.
Desayunar.
In English, breakfast by itself is not a verb.
I have lunch.
That's collocation, isn't it?
I have dinner.
Professor,
So,
We have
I mean,
verbs for those.
don't you think that this is a really useful activity to help students to realize, oh, wow, the languages are different. In English, they use this verb have in all kinds of weird ways that we don't in Spanish. And so by drawing attention to the differences, you're actually helping them to become, to avoid those errors, or at least to become aware of this situation. So I personally think that translation has a very important role in drawing the learner's attention to the differences between their L1 and the L2. And when they are more aware, then they are more likely to learn and not make the mistake. Teacher, who was it who was talking about false cognates? Was that Teacher Suri?
No, Professor.
No, Teacher Yiddish, yeah. So have you heard the phrase, teacher, false friends?
Yes, it's the same, right? It is calling false friends, false cognates. We have 3 categories of them. We have some of them that they are written in the same way, with a little bit, difference in the pronunciations. We have the other that are partial cognates. I was teaching that the last semester. That's the reason that I have the information that it is fresh, here with today.
How do you say I catch a bus in Spanish?
No. What is that?
How do you say I catch a bus?
That is autobús. Catching the bus. Okay, tomar el autobús.
We said tomo el autobús, tomar el autobús.
We used to say coger.
Yo atrapo el bus.
Yeah, but that's
Professor Lowe, I have one that I myself don't know how to say it in Spanish, but not because I'm saying it perfectly in English, okay? But sometimes we tell our kids, like, okay, mind your own business. So I don't know how to say that. Maneja tu asunto. It's not correct, right?
No, mind your own business would be no te metes, no?
Yeah, but it doesn't have a direct translation. So when I'm speaking with them in Spanish, right, at home. But to say that phrase to them, I said it in English. Okay, but go ahead and mind your own business, because I don't know how to say it in Spanish. So maybe I should say maneja tu asunto.
No, that's something that becomes almost like problematic when you are bilingual. I mean, my Spanish is not perfect. There's still lots of words that I need to learn, but I think my Spanish is probably like a C1 level. And sometimes I find myself thinking in Spanish now and then trying to translate to English and not being able to. So for example, my mother right now, she has a few health issues, right? And my brother has decided to go and stay with her for a week to kind of look after her, right? And I was telling my friend this, and I was thinking in my mind, yes, he's going to be pendiente, like él va a estar pendiente de nuestra madre. And so I was thinking, yeah, he's going to be pendiente. And I was like, how do you say pendiente in English? And I was like, oh, you can't really. You would have to say, he's going to be like there for her. He's going to be there for her, or he's going to be available for her, or he's going to be looking out for her. But in Spanish, you have this one word, pendiente, which expresses that concept just in one word. But in English, you can't say that. You have to use a phrase of 4 or 5 words. So that's when it becomes quite interesting that you realize that certain languages have a word that you can't really capture in the other language. You have to kind of go around the bushes a little bit to get there, right?
On the other hand, the idea of idioms or idiomatic expression is that they have equivalent in Spanish, so you cannot translate them.
No. Some of them you can translate, but not all of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Teacher Erica, you wanted to say something?
You know what Professor Stanley was saying? Maybe culturally talking in Spanish will be a little bit a low register. Register is the level of formality, but that expression in Spanish will be no te metas.
No te metas is kind of rude, is it?
Yeah, like the register is kind of, you know. So
Aggressive.
But that way in English is more, you know, more not that, you know. You are telling that person no te metas, pero no en una forma.
Yeah, although I think a lot depends on your tone of voice. Because if I say, mind your own business, then I'm being, you know, pretty aggressive. But I say, come on, mind your own business. So it kind of, everything as well depends to a certain extent on the way you say it as well, right? But yes, there's not really a nice way to say no te metas. It sounds,
Sorry, teacher.
Yeah.
A translation for that phrase could be like, ocúpese de sus asuntos, o siga en lo suyo. Sounds
Siga lo suyo, okay.
like less offensive.
Yeah. This could be a really interesting class because Erica is drawing attention to register. So certain phrases have a certain level of formality or a certain tone, right? And trying to capture that, like teacher Aylin is doing now, she's using slightly more sophisticated or softer language. No te metas is like muy abrupto, but ocúpese de sus asuntos, that sounds muy, para usar un término panameño, muy ye, ¿verdad? So yeah, translation, a fascinating topic. So guys, you know, I think that what's happening here is that we are reflecting on aspects of language teaching, and now we're getting very excited and interested about different topics, which is great because that's the idea, that when you reflect, it makes you think about certain issues and discuss them and really maybe explore what you think and what other people think and consider other people's you know, suggestions and so on. So I don't think that we have been wasting our time right now. I think that this is exactly the kind of rich conversation that comes out when we reflect, okay? So just to remind you, this activity is something that you can do without any intervention from anybody else. All you need to do is to write some sentences, maybe ask your colleagues to write some things that they believe or they don't believe. And maybe if you ask them to think about things that are a little bit controversial or things that would spark a debate, like something that you think that you genuinely strongly believe that might spark a debate, and then use these sentences as like a springboard to have a conversation with your colleagues. And I think that that can be more enriching than a, you know, webinar or a workshop, just having that interaction with your peers. Okay, so we'll stop there for now. It's 3:15. We're going to have a 15-minute break, and I'll see you back here at 3:30. Okay, see you later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. See you later.
Bye.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. It's 3:30 now.
Hello,
Good
hello.
afternoon. Yeah. Hello, hello.
Hi, I hope you are feeling refreshed
Oh, yes.
and ready for the second half. We only actually have an hour and a half now, so it's less than a half, but or like a third. Okay, so let me show you what we were going to do. 1 second. So we had that interesting experience of you know, saying whether we agreed or not with different statements and then discussing it. So here is an extension activity which you can do, where you take one of those statements. So for example, maybe you could say, don't allow silences for more than a few seconds during lessons. So instead of saying, I do this or I believe it, you make it like a recommendation. And then what you have to do is brainstorm with your partners as many arguments as possible for and against the recommendation. So even if you disagree or you agree, it forces you to think about the other side of the argument, okay? And that can be sometimes useful for realizing that, you know, things are not black and white. There could be gray. There could be certain situations in which that thing, like don't allow silences, you could say, no, it's okay to have silence, but in some situations it might not be. So trying to analyze a recommendation from both perspectives can be very useful in helping you to kind of see different perspectives and possibilities. So we were going to do that, but because, sorry. Sorry? Okay, I think somebody was just had their mic on. Okay, so we're not going to do that, but that's something that you might like to consider. Maybe if we have time, we can come back to this, but I'd like to move on so that we cover our objectives. So another self-evaluation method is to have like a questionnaire, okay? So you could write some questions like, am I satisfied with the way that I'm teaching at the moment? If not, what aspects of my teaching cause this dissatisfaction? Okay, so you're actually asking yourself, you're not going to have a conversation about it, you're having a dialogue with yourself. Am I happy with the materials I use? If not, what is it about these materials that causes this feeling? Are my learners happy with what I do and the way I teach? If not, what are the possible reasons for this dissatisfaction? Which of the above problems can I affect directly myself? And which of the above problems could an observer help me with? So, you know, you could formulate other questions, but sometimes you can conduct useful reflection just by asking yourself questions. And there's something about writing the answer down, which kind of forces you to articulate it in a more kind of structured way. So I recommend, you know, if you have 15 minutes, maybe writing down a paragraph about how you feel about your teaching, or how you feel about the materials you're using, or how you think the learners are satisfied. And try and write a paragraph, you know, write for like 10 or 15 minutes. And the act of writing may result in you producing certain ideas that maybe you wouldn't come up with unless you force yourself to write, okay? So I think that can be a good reflection activity. Does anybody have any comments before I move on?
So
okay,
we are
so
looking only for negative aspect in our self-evaluation, or if for example, I'm satisfied with my way that I am teaching at the moment, I just state how I'm teaching, or I need to put something like that
Yeah, that's a very good point, teacher Tanya. I mean, you don't, it doesn't, like I said before, right at the beginning, there was a quote about, it's not that you're necessarily doing something wrong, but you could do something even better, right? So, yeah, by all means, writing things that you're happy to do. For improvement, you could say, like, I'm really pleased with the rapport I have with my learners, and I want to continue developing that. Okay, so you're expressing something that's going well. Did anybody else want to say anything? I think somebody has their mic. Let me just mute again. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about observation. Okay, the word that can strike fear into people's hearts. So there are many different ways to conduct observations. One is to do a self-observation, okay? So you can do this either using video, audio, or just your memory of the lesson. And we'll talk about a way of doing that a little bit later. You can also conduct peer observations. That's when basically you're observing another teacher. And obviously you can also have a supervisor observation. It's important to ask, what is the purpose of the observation? Is it developmental or is it evaluative? So if there is evaluation involved, that's usually the supervisor observation. Obviously, that does make the atmosphere of the observation a little bit different, right? More formal, perhaps a little bit more tense, and a sense that you're being judged. But it's very good to be observed by peers, to observe yourself, and even to invite your supervisor to observe you in a more formative way. So the more we are observed and that we get feedback from other people, the more information and different perspectives we have on our teaching practice. Okay, so at this point, I'd mentioned about the self-observation. I'd like to share with you this slide, which is something that, you know, a lot of people have not heard of, I think. It's called the unseen observation. And so if we look at the different stages, so the teacher at the top, we can see that the teacher identifies focus lesson and sends a lesson plan to the supervisor. That could also be a peer. It doesn't have to be a supervisor. The teacher and the supervisor meet to discuss the lesson plan and maybe make changes according to suggestions that the supervisor may have or the peer may have. The teacher delivers the unobserved lesson. The teacher writes a reflective account and meets with the supervisor, and the teacher writes a series of action points. So what is maybe nice about this type of observation is that there's still interaction with another person, okay? But the teacher who is delivering the class is a little bit more in control of the process, because obviously when they write the reflective account, they are more kind of in control of what information they decide to share with the other person. So we're still getting the benefit of some response or feedback from the other person, but the teacher delivering the class is more in control of the process. So that could be an idea that you would like to experiment with, either with your peer or with your supervisor. I think supervisors would be really surprised if you invited them to observe them or to engage in this type of activity. Does anybody have any comments about this strategy? Okay, well, I'll let you think about it and we'll move on to the next topic. So the next topic is peer observation. And in peer observation, we have benefits for the teacher being observed, obviously, because they're receiving the feedback. We have benefits for the observer because they are gaining different ideas and different approaches from their colleague. And benefits for the school because obviously the more sharing of best practice and the more feedback that is shared between colleagues, the more development will take place. So this is something that is really beneficial for everybody. Maybe it does take a little bit of time, and obviously the best way to do a peer observation is to meet before and after the observation. So it can be a little bit time consuming, but really, really worthwhile. And I think what's very important, we mentioned earlier that the teacher being observed must feel in control of the situation. So it's important to tell the observer what you want them to focus on. Okay, so you might say, I want you to focus on the way I'm giving instructions or my questions. Do I ask the questions in such a way that the students understand what I'm asking? And so you're asking them for specific feedback. So rather than the observer deciding what to tell you, you are requesting them to focus on certain things, which, you know, helps you feel a little bit more in control. At this point, I'd like to show a little video. It's from the Education Authority in Australia. I don't know if you have heard Australian English much. Let me. Okay, here's the video.
Peer observation at Ipswich Girls Grammar School is the process whereby a teacher arranges to come in and spend some time in the classroom of another teacher looking at the strategies that are used within the class. We have a specific focus in that we're looking at lesson structure and particularly the articulation of lesson objective. When we started our quality teaching project, the first thing we did was quite an extensive literature review, and it was very clear from the literature that peer observation was one of the best strategies for professional development that we could provide for our staff. The teachers would have a short meeting before the lesson where they talk about what's going to happen in the lesson, you know, what the objective is going to be, and you know, how the lesson is going to flow.
Well, this is a grade 5 class, and our lesson today is teaching the children about how words are used by authors and readers to take meaning from different texts.
I'm really keen to see how you explicitly give your objective to the class and also your anticipatory set. That's something that I really want to focus on in my teaching.
So class, today's lesson, as you know, is about teaching and understanding tone and mood.
The teacher who's doing the observing goes in, he or she will have a little worksheet that they fill out. We call our peer observations VOTs, which is visit other teachers each term. And so the teacher is looking at, you know, what did I see, what did I learn, what can I do to improve my own teaching as a result of what I've seen.
As we spoke about before the lesson, I was really keen to look at how you stated the objectives to the students and also the anticipatory set that you used. The anticipatory set, which was something that I was really interested in, was fabulous. The use of multimedia engaged the students straight away. The images that we used were fabulous. They were targeted right at the students' level. They were laughing along with the clips, that, you know, they were really interested in the images that they were being shown. And certainly it introduced the lesson on tone and mood really well.
Do you think you could use this sort of thing in home economics?
Absolutely. While I was watching your lesson, I was thinking that, how could I use this in my subject area? And I was thinking that the use of images would be perfect, particularly when we're doing a practical lesson. If we were making something like cupcakes, then I could show them some clips from maybe MasterChef or Cake Boss, showing them the production, showing them the end product, so they see what they're going to be doing in that lesson in short, sharp grabs, so their attention's gained straight away.
The response from teachers to peer observation has been very positive. I think as they've undertaken the observations, they've realised that this is a way that they really can pick up some new ideas, some new strategies, some different approaches, and it gives them an opportunity to actually see what happens, you know, in someone else's classroom. So that's been very positive.
It's been fantastic, particularly for my own teaching. I've really been able to get some new teaching methodologies that maybe I'd had a few years ago that I'd forgotten to use. It's that real cross-fertilisation of looking at what someone else does and what they have success with, and then being able to implement that into your own classroom.
Implementing peer observations are challenging for all parties. Initially, teachers may feel hesitant about having somebody else in their classroom. Sometimes you can feel a little bit embarrassed. And just having an understanding that they're there not necessarily to judge you, but to watch what you do and take things from it in a positive way, has certainly helped people to overcome that fear or that concern about the agenda behind it all.
I think one of the most interesting things that we've learned is that teachers have so much to learn from one another, not just within their narrow subject areas or year levels, but from across the school. It's been a great way for us to showcase what we're doing as a school to improve the quality of our teachers and our teaching.
Peer observation changes the way I think about teaching by encouraging me to reflect more on my own practice and making sure that I am covering the steps that the quality teaching teams have shown us work better for student learning.
So guys, how did you find the Australian English? Did you find it easy to understand or difficult?
Easy to understand.
You found it difficult or
No.
easy?
No, it wasn't difficult.
No. Okay,
Oh,
good.
everything was clear. Everything was clear.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. So what did you think to the video? What were some interesting points that came up?
Okay, the teacher that was visiting, the one that was doing the peer observation, she wanted to know how to, better on her methodology and stuff. But she's not evaluating her peer. She's just trying to gain more experience. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's interesting. You should pick up on that. I think that was the case, that in many ways, the person who was observing was kind of learning from the other one rather than judging the other one, right?
Okay, that's what I realized, that she was trying to get more experience from her peer, and the other one was, well, very.
But I think maybe they didn't show it so much, but I think that probably she was giving some feedback as well to the other teacher. But yeah, it's nice. But thank you for drawing our attention to the fact that really in this case, the observer was kind of getting maybe more from the process than the person actually being observed. What else did anybody notice that was worthy of comment?
Hello. Sorry for my feedback. Well, I think, in my opinion, in a positive way, you can learn a lot with your peer, because maybe you are doing things that are not that they are wrong, but maybe not in a good way, and you can improve. You can be better. So I think that it's a good implementation that we can apply here in Panama. I know that sometimes you, as she said, you feel embarrassed to have someone in your classroom because sometimes we feel like somebody is judging us. But I think that we have to I don't know, to see the positive way, the positive side of that implementation. This is my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you, Teacher Johannes. Teacher Erica.
You know, when the one that was observed, she said that that's a way to be to reflect on her own teaching. Even though she is supposed to be the model, but make her reflect on her way of teaching. So doing that, she was gaining and she was actually making a reflection on her own way of teaching.
Absolutely, yeah. That's really, I think what you've just said is really interesting because, you know, I have done like professional development courses where you have to put into action something that you were learning about, and you have to get somebody to observe you and to fill out a form. I used to work with Panama Bilingüe, and I was involved in the Cambridge certification program. And so our teachers on that program had that experience where each month they were learning about a new topic, and then they had to do a teaching practice, and then somebody would observe them and give them feedback. And whenever you are going to be observed, you become more aware and you think more about what you're going to do. So, okay, many of us associate being observed with being judged, but it can also be a positive thing because it makes us go the extra mile, right? When we know we're going to be observed, maybe we think, okay, I'm going to really do my best to make this like my best class because I want to give a good impression to the observer. So it kind of puts you under healthy pressure to go the extra mile and maybe, you know, really do your best. I'm not saying, you know, we don't do our best all the time, but, you know, when it's natural when you're being observed that you want to, you know, do well. So I think that putting yourself under that pressure from time to time can be a good thing. Does anybody here have the experience of having peer observations? Teacher Hilda.
Okay. Let me fix it. Okay. I remember a colleague that sadly he died, but when he came to the school, he told me, Hilda, I could enter in your class and see how you teach your class. So I say, yes, right, come. So he came, and then when I finished do the lesson, he told me, okay, Hilda. He came to the classroom to observe how I give my class and to take any okay, observe and only imitate then what I was doing. Learn about my experience in the class. I work with Panama Bilingüe.
Okay.
So
And when he came, when I finished the lesson, the class, he told me, okay, Hilda, you do it good, but I need you to advise with give you some advice with some pronunciation. So I tell him, oh, good. Okay, tell me what words I don't spell or pronounce good. So he say this one, this one, this one. I'm very happy because like some teachers say there's no that when in group of with an next teacher, most teacher don't give you some advice, but this teacher, sadly he died, but I learned plenty with him.
Okay, good. That's really nice. Thank you, Teacher Hilda. I mean, it's really great that, you know, you felt grateful for your colleagues' correction. I think that you have to be a little bit careful though, because some people might feel a bit offended. I mean, you took the feedback in a positive way, so that's really great. But generally speaking, I think it's a good idea for the observer and the observee to agree in advance about what kind of feedback you want, okay? So, you know, if you're going to be observed in the future by another colleague, maybe you should say, you know, if you hear me make any mistakes with my pronunciation, I'd be really grateful for you to tell me. And then the other person knows that that is something that you are inviting, that you're asking for, okay? Because otherwise, I mean, you know, like I say, it's great that you took his feedback in the way it was intended, but we have to be sensitive that not everybody would receive that type of feedback in a positive way. So that's why it's good to negotiate before the observation what you want feedback on. So I want you to give me feedback. So if you say, I want you to give me feedback on my English, good, that person will do it. I want you to give me feedback on my instructions, etc. So that, you know, that it has been agreed in advance. Yeah. I think somebody else wanted to say something. Teacher Osiris.
Yes, I used to join Panama Bilingue also. The first year, I was not that happy with the supervision. I have to say it. It was
Are you talking about the Cambridge program?
Not really. The person or the professor was the supervisor of the region, for say something, or of the area where I used to work. And they used to take 1 day a week to go and supervise, you know, all the teachers, or depending on the teacher during the week. But at first it was not that comfortable, you know, but I learned that it was good. Finally, I learned that it was good.
Yeah, there were many different initiatives from Panama Bilingue. One was the Cambridge program. One was the international program where they were sending people overseas for 6 to 9 months. And then they had other back to basics, I think it was called. They had these training sessions. And then they had supervisors, you know, visiting. So it's you were just receiving the visits from the supervisor, is that right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Now
and you didn't. That. So you didn't enjoy the experience.
Well, the first year, no, I was very, very uncomfortable with the situation because I was not used to that, to have that. But then I learned that it was good because they was looking for a certain thing. Like, for example, this week they will be looking for pronunciation. The next week they were looking for grammar lesson or something like that. You know, the other week for science explanation. So it really helped. It really helped.
Okay.
Now I wish to be, you know, in that program, but
sorry.
Okay.
Okay, teachers. So this is your intervention is perfect, Teacher Alcides, because it takes me on to the next topic, which is how you feel about formal observations. Okay, so we know we've talked about how you can observe yourself. We've talked about a peer observation, which has the benefit that you are basically observing an equal, one of your colleagues. So there the idea is developmental, right? That you're offering feedback to help the other person. But when you're being observed by your supervisor, how do you feel? So what I would like you to do now is to go to menti.com. Can everybody go to menti.com?
Are you gonna give us the
And
name?
I'm going to give you a code.
Okay.
Sorry, is that Mentimeter?
Yeah, just go to menti.com and enter the code 13780925. You can see it, I've just highlighted it there, yeah? So I would like you to give me 3 words to describe how you feel when you know you're going to be observed. And we're talking about a formal observation now, not a peer observation or something like that, when it's going to be an evaluation.
Professor, can you repeat please the link or the address that we have to we need to?
Yeah. Can you not see it on the screen?
It is very small. Maybe I can type it. I got it.
I wrote workload, but I don't see. I just see an image. I don't know if I am wrong.
It's Mentimeter.
It's Mentimeter.
No, it's menti.com. Don't go to
Okay.
Mentimeter is when you're creating the presentation, but menti.com is when you're asking people to.
Can you send that
now,
link to the chat room?
Menti.com.
I already wrote that.
I can access. I cannot see it. Menti. Okay.
If you look at the screen, you should be able to see at the top, it says go to menti.com and use the code.
Mr. Lowe, can you?
Yep.
What is the question? Can you
The question is, how do you feel when you know you're going to be observed by a supervisor? So we have lack of confidence, insecure, stress, nervous, mindset, challenging. Challenged again, shy, nervous. So you can see in these word clouds, when a particular word gets repeated, then it gets bigger, right? So we can see the word stress is the biggest word. So that means that maybe 3 or 4 people have entered that word. Do you ever use Menti in your classes?
Yes.
What kind of things do you use it for?
To introduce a topic sometimes.
Yeah.
I have used that to introduce topic.
Okay. What can you give an example of how you'd introduce a topic?
Like when we talk about, for example, like the part of a computer. So I have students, I have used that for that to ask a student like to write down how many part of the computer they know about it, the hardware and the software, from the hardware and software.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we can see all kinds of words here. Now, somebody put optimist. That's interesting. Who would anybody like to, the person that wrote that, would they like to share with us what they meant?
Well, I said optimist because I'm gonna learn something of the experience, right? Maybe optimistic or something.
Yeah, sure. But most of the words here are negative, right? They express fear, nervousness, embarrassment, lack of confidence, stress. So everybody, well, the vast majority of colleagues are expressing negative things. So let's just talk a moment about observations. So in the chat, could you write how many times a year you get observed in an official capacity? So just write a number, 1, 2, 3, 10. How many times do you get observed in your school or your university in an official capacity? Once a year? Thank you, Adriana. Hilda also said once. Thank you, Hilda. Belgica, 3 or 4. Okay. Yeah, I can imagine it, Tanya. I was also very upset about that. Once a year? Two or 3? Okay. So many institutions only do an official observation once a year. What do we think about that? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Teacher Hilda, you mentioned that you get observed once a year. Do you think it would be better if you were observed more often?
I think that it's better that I will observe more than one, because if I have, okay, I always look down and the positive way, if somebody advice or to tell me a feedback or whatever. So I think if they observe the supervisor go like twice or 3 in the year or trimester by trimester, I think that is better.
Okay.
Because if I making a error or it missing something in the lesson, he can advise me.
Yeah, thank you. So you would like more feedback. That's great. I also think that it's a little bit unfair when all of your annual evaluation is placed on one class, right? Because if that particular class doesn't go well, let's say for some reason the students are not very cooperative, or, you know, not all classes are a complete success, right? And that one class is like what is used to evaluate your entire performance over the year. That's kind of unfair.
And also, I think if when you know that your supervisor, when I'm visit, you do the best.
Okay, now that's an interesting question. Should official observations be conducted with warning or without warning? What do you think?
I think it should be with warning, due to the fact that you will be able to prepare yourself, prepare the kids, because most likely what they do in Meduca is that they surprise you, and sometimes you are not there. So who's surprised? They are surprised. Sometimes you have a medical attendance to take your kids, or something is going on, or the school is in celebrating. It's better when they tell you they're coming, because what's going to happen is going to happen anyways. So that's my opinion. They should schedule it.
So I'm gonna play devil's advocate. Are you familiar with that phrase? El abogado del diablo. You say it in Spanish, right? Devil's advocate. So what I'm gonna say is, okay, but let's okay, we're seeing it from our perspective of the teacher, but what about the accountability? So you know, in any kind of organization, including education, we should be accountable to our employers. And in that way, it is fair for the supervisor to arrive without warning. Why? Because if we warn the teacher, maybe the teacher's going to, like I said earlier, when you're going to be observed by a peer, obviously you want to do a good job because you want to give a good impression to your peer. You don't want your peer to think, oh, you know, he's a mediocre teacher, whatever. You want to present yourself in a positive light. And so for a supervisor, if you are always advising this teacher when you're coming, you're not really going to see the reality of the situation. You're going to see like a stage managed version, like a theatrical version, the version that the teacher wants you to see rather than what really happens on a day-to-day basis. How would you respond to that, teacher Tanya?
Well, actually, I can give an experience with that based on the fact that my subdirector, she came to the classroom, and she sit in the classroom and she saw everything that I did. Thanks to the Lord, when you are, as you said, you know your job and you're gonna do it positively, you're gonna get a good score in your evaluation. But in my opinion, they should tell the professor that they come in, because as I was saying before, Meduca, they use it only against you. Supervision, sorry, is to help you become better. It's not to damage you. So there is no reason why you're not going to tell me, because if my supervisor come to my classroom and she realized that I'm doing something wrong, she has to teach me how to do it better. That's supervision. That's her job. So if I'm doing my best right now, I'm prepared, but something went wrong, she still has to do her job with me. But Meduca is using this as something against teachers, only to find negativeness and not positiveness.
Right.
Okay. That's, you know, I work in the public school. I don't know how it goes in private school. Maybe it's different, but it should be like that. If I'm wrong, either way, they have to give me or provide me the seminars, for example, that I need.
Right. Thank you. Does anybody else want to comment on this topic? it's certainly a controversial area of education, right? I think observation should be mainly developmental, but there is also a need to evaluate performance. So I think the perfect scenario is if you can have a mix, so that a teacher is observed by peers, maybe does a little bit of self-observation as well, and is observed in an official capacity at least 2 or 3 times a year. And that way you get a better sample of the teacher's work. But I agree with you, Teacher Tanya, that the emphasis should be on development, not on judging, right? Of course,
exactly, because as you said, when we did the mentee.com, all the words were negative, and it shouldn't be negative. We should be positive, excited, optimistic, because what is coming is more knowledge to you. They cannot use supervision against you. So don't be afraid of it.
Yeah. Does anybody want to share any positive experiences they've had with supervision?
Oh my God.
So nobody's had a positive experience. Teacher Erica.
I'm sorry, Professor. Everybody has different experiences. See? Example, I got supervised by my director, the English supervisor, example, with the coordinator sometimes. So I consider that if we're English teacher, we should be supervised by somebody that speak English. If we can, I will be happy to have a positive feedback, but sometimes they don't say anything. They just sit down in there, they expect you to explain everything that you're doing in the class because they don't understand sometimes. So it depends on the experiences. See? But when it's good, for instance, we were the trainers. We have 9 modules before we get the certification from Cambridge, and that was good because she was giving us feedback, etc., etc. But I'm always open to learn or have new experiences. But the fact is, you need to have good feedback, positive feedback.
Yeah. So you were one of the teachers that got certified.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yes, thanks. That was a very hard work.
It was, yeah, I know.
They're very nice.
I'm very sorry, Teacher Tanya, that you weren't able to. That was so frustrating. We just in case you don't know what we're referring to, other teachers. So when the pandemic hit in March 2020, there was a group of Panama Bilingue teachers who they had finished all of the 9 modules, but they had to do their final teaching practice and they had to do the TKT exam. And unfortunately, the pandemic hit, and I was saying to the authorities, let's do it online. Let's do the teaching practice online. But they were saying no, because in Panama, that's not how we teach in the public sector. That's not like a realistic. But I was saying, yeah, but if we don't do it now, this pandemic, we don't know how long it's gonna last, and we may miss the opportunity to certify these teachers. And unfortunately, time passed. And then it was also because there was a new government, right? Because the Panama Bilingue Cambridge program was part of the Varela government. And then when the new government came, they didn't want to continue. So can you imagine? It was very unfortunate because people like Teacher Tanya had invested 9 months of effort and then they couldn't cross the finishing line. So very sad. But Teacher Tanya, that you benefited from from the experience. Maybe you didn't get the piece of paper, but you got all of the knowledge and insight. Yeah, and I can tell that you're a very aware and passionate teacher.
Yes, actually, many of these aspects that you are talking about were involved in those modules. Not all, because meta condition wasn't there, but I kind of remember some of those.
Yeah, role reflection was definitely a major part of the Cambridge program, because you remember after each teaching practice, you had to fill out a form where you were reflecting on the class, how it went, how you could do it better. Yeah? You're mute, teacher Tanya.
Yes, it was very interesting. And as I said, I was so excited. I was about to get my certification and pandemic came in and it was, oh man. I'm still asking, we still keep the chat group every day. So what's up? Are we going to finish it sometime? And they don't have any more answer for us. They just have answering me. So I'm gonna leave them alone.
Well, I'm afraid I have some bad news for you, which is that Cambridge have now discontinued that certification.
Okay.
So there's no way that we can, even if we wanted to, they don't, that certification has been withdrawn. Because what happened was when the pandemic hit, all of the ministries of education that had been funding that program, they cut the funding. So nobody was buying those products.
Maybe they cannot certify us, but give us what do you call that? An associate document, certificate, something that say, okay, they did 9 modules at least for 9 months. It was very, very extensive, and I worked for all like me. As you said, I'm passionate. It's not lie. I was doing my stuff. I scheduled myself to sit down and did not do the TKT. That was the only thing that was missing. So they should like give them an associate at least, something that say, well, these people were in something that not certify us, but that accept that we were there trying to do it.
Okay, I agree. Okay, let's move on now to another topic, which is getting feedback from our students. Okay, so one second. How can we get feedback from our students, guys?
At the end of classes, I used to do that. Before.
Okay, what did you do, teacher Osiris?
I used to make some questions about me for my students, like they don't have to place their name or level or anything, just to answer the questions with very honestly manner. You know, like for example, I used to one of my first question is like, okay, do you feel comfortable with the teacher? You know, during the class. And the other one is, did you understand or understood all the classes about the new topics or the topics? The topics were interested for you, and you know, some questions like that.
Okay, so can everybody look in the chat and thinking about what teacher Osiris has just said? I want you to click on Padlet. Okay, have you used Padlet before? It's a very nice. This is a really cool app that I discovered during the pandemic when we were giving our classes online. Basically, what it allows you to do is that each person can like create a little post-it, right? And they can post their ideas. So I'd like you to click on the link that I just shared. And you're going to see, you should see this screen, okay? And what you do is you click on the yellow plus symbol on the bottom right, and that will open like a little post-it. So what I would like you to do is to write
Sorry, Professor, where you share the link for Padlet? In the chat box?
Yes, he has connectivity problem.
Yes, a connectivity problem. You are mute, Professor Daniel.
Hi, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Where do you share the link? In the chat box?
Yes.
Well, it doesn't appear.
It's not there.
Okay, let me do it again.
It's there.
Can you see it?
Let me check.
It says DL. Yes, no, yes.
Yes, Jahani. Where is the link, Jahani?
Can you see it now?
Well, it's in the chat box. It's in the chat box.
In the chat box.
It's twice in the chat box.
Twice?
I don't see it. Maybe
me neither.
Sorry, I didn't see it.
Okay.
I don't see it.
Scroll down your chat box because I don't know why it appears at the end and not at the beginning.
Okay. Let me. What I can do is I can also put it on the Google.
Yes, Jahari. The only thing that appears in the chat box is you writing. Okay. Yeah. Here it is. Here it is. Yes,
Okay,
it's in the chat box. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now
I'm putting it in the I'm putting it in the Google group as well. You'll see a link if you go to the Google Classroom. If you can't see it in the chat, I don't know if there's some problem with my connectivity. I can see it. Oh, and teacher Johannes has shared it. Thank you. So what I want you to do is to write a question that you could ask your students at the end of the class to get feedback of their opinion about, or get feedback on your teaching. I can see, so you need, when you're finished, click on post, I think. So you can see that when you click on.
I need to write one question requesting my students to give me feedback.
Yeah, one question you could ask them at the end of the class.
Oh, okay. Here. At the end of.
It's pretty cool though, isn't it, this app?
Yes.
Because it allows you to create a, like, you know, brainstorming. People can put like a sentence that you can even insert pictures as well.
Yes.
And what's nice is, I mean, sometimes you could ask them to write their name if you wanted to, but it's also, you can leave it anonymous like this, so people don't feel like, you know, if they make a mistake, it's going to be, people will be judging them negatively or anything like that. Okay, so here we have Do you think topics like this improve your English language? What new words did you learn today? So some teachers are focusing on the learning, okay, and that's an interesting thing to reflect on, because sometimes, you know, we may have a particular objective, but what the students say they learned may be something completely different. So that can be interesting information for us. I like the teacher who put any suggestions on what we can do differently for our next class. Now that type of question, it takes, like, you know, guts to ask. A lot of teachers feel nervous about opening themselves up to criticism from the learners. So, you know, what can we do differently? You're actually acknowledging that maybe they would prefer to do something different to what you're currently doing. So, you know, that takes guts, as we say, to ask that question. Did the course meet your expectations? We could even say, did the lesson meet your expectations? What do you recommend for next time? Yeah, very nice. So it'd be interesting to hear their recommendations. How did you feel during the class? Very nice. What thing was not clear about the class today? Excellent. So you're asking them to tell you things that they still didn't quite understand, or they need more clarification. So by inviting these comments, you're going to get valuable feedback from the students, which will help you plan the next class. What was the most difficult topic for you? Was the class interesting for you? What sparked your attention from today's class? Very nice. Lots of, did you understand the lesson? Yeah, very good. Can you give me your opinion about the reading selection, dyslexia? That's also interesting. Like, what did they think about the topic? Now, as we said, you know, not everyone's going to find everything interesting. So you may get obviously get different answers there, which you're going to take into consideration. Was the class well explained? Did you understand everything? You could ask them about your instructions as well. Did you understand my instructions? Were you clear about what you had to do? And what do you think, teachers? Do you think that with this type of feedback that it might be a good idea to ask them to write in Spanish, or you think it's better in English?
If we would like to find the correct feedback, then maybe it would be better for them to write in Spanish, I think. If the purpose is to get feedback from our students, maybe it would be best to get it in Spanish.
Yes.
We really would like them to express their feelings.
Exactly. And also for time management reasons, right? You don't want this to turn into a long process. You want it to be something they can do in 2 or 3 minutes at the end of the class before they leave. So probably for that reason as well, it would be a good idea to do it in Spanish. Does anybody have any other observations about this process? Okay, teachers, so I hope that you found that Padlet activity interesting. If you haven't used Padlet before and you teach online, I strongly recommend it. I think it's a really useful tool. And I also think that it's really, really good idea to get your students to give you feedback on a regular basis, not every day, obviously, but maybe once a week. And not only is it a good practice for you to get their feedback, but also it demonstrates that you care about their opinion, which is part of generating a positive learning relationship with your students. If you show that you are genuinely interested in their opinions, that generates good feeling, right? So I think that beyond just getting the feedback itself, it also you're showing yourself to be somebody who is open to their, to listening to their opinions, and hopefully maybe even taking some of them into account, right? It's also maybe good to ask them to give you recommendations about, what topics they might be interested in talking about. So if you're teaching the verb to be, and they want to talk about baseball, for example, you could make a class where they're using the verb to be to describe baseball players or something like that. So giving them the opportunities to suggest topics as well as giving feedback on your teaching. Has anybody ever done this? Would you like to share any experiences you've had?
Professor, hi, it's Maria.
Hi there.
Well, I'm not going to say that I have this experience as a feedback, but I work for the UTP, and the UTP, there is mandatory that the students not feedback or evaluate their teachers.
Okay.
Every semester, they have to evaluate us. Mm-hmm. If we were on time during the class hour, if we were developing the course, we met the objective of the course, if we focus on the topic or what we're supposed to teach during the semester. Sometimes it's kind of difficult because maybe some students will be fair in that evaluation, but other students are not so fair. Because, for example, if they fail the course, they're not going to give you a good evaluation. And that happens many times with a lot of teachers, because they are focusing on, well, I failed the course. Why you failed the course? Maybe you were not attending to classes. You were not complying with your obligations. You were not studying enough to have good grades on the test, or maybe a lot of things that happens. So that happens to me personally. When one student, for example, they miss like 3 tests or 3 activities that we got during the semester. Obviously, he's not going to pass the course. But that doesn't mean that the teacher is not a good teacher, or maybe that we are not doing our job. But they take that against us that, well, I failed the course, you were supposed to give me an opportunity. So it's like a back and forward, like, I don't know how to say that, but it's like, maybe it's good because some students give you good feedback because we are not perfect on things that we can improve. Maybe we need to focus more, for example, in pronunciation, or focus more in grammar. So, or maybe we did an activity that was too long for them, was hard for them, but that's feedback, good feedback that we can use to improve our teaching, because we are not, let's say, perfect.
Right.
That's my experience at the UTP.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously those end of trimester surveys are something that some organizations like force the students. They have to do the survey. And so often they just go click, 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 just to do it, right? And they're not really paying attention to what they're doing. So that can be problematic. But yeah, what I'm talking about here, though, teacher, is you, not the institution, but you initiating this process. So you would say at the end of one of your classes, okay, guys, I'd be really grateful if you could just spend 2 or 3 minutes giving me some feedback on this class, you know, your opinions are really interesting to me, and your feedback is useful for my own reflection. So I'd be very grateful if you could just, you know, answer this question. Just, you know, write 2 or 3 sentences. It doesn't have to be a big deal. And if you prefer to do it in Spanish, that's absolutely fine. The purpose of this is just to get your feedback. And like I said before, apart from generating interesting information that you may be surprised by, or that you may find quite interesting and useful, it also presents you in a positive light, because you're showing yourself to be a person who's open to feedback rather than closed, right? And people usually have a positive impression of that type of person. Teacher Mariela.
You know what I used to do at the University of Panama? Something that I call the exit ticket.
An exit ticket, did you say?
Yes, the exit ticket, yes. When I finish in some courses, if I got time, when I finish a lesson, for example, the day, I give them some tickets that they have, some Post-it. What do you learn today? Or what do you think that I need to emphasize on this lesson? Or what do you want me to do for next class because you were struggling with this and this and that? Or maybe did you enjoy the today's class? Or there is something else that you need me to explain it again or whatever. But I used to do that, the exit ticket.
Yeah, it's often referred to as an exit ticket. That's true. Some teachers use exit tickets with like a couple of questions to see, not about your own teaching, but like, I want to see proof that you actually learned something. But I prefer your approach of using it to get feedback. So yeah, exit tickets, that's a good way of describing them. Teacher Karen, did you want to say something? No? Okay. I thought you were trying to get my attention. Anybody else want to make any comments about exit tickets or getting feedback from learners at the end of the class? No? Okay, so we'll move on to a new topic. And so we were talking earlier about you know, how you can evaluate, you can observe yourself. And one way to do that is to actually video your class. Now, in my presentation, I have a big video camera, and that would obviously be very over the top, right? And, you know, we don't have the resources to have a video camera like that. But I just wanted to illustrate the idea of videoing. And these days with smartphones, it's very easy to just, you know, lean your smartphone against the wall and press record. And, you know, you don't need to be even pointing the camera at the students. You could just be pointing the camera at yourself. And then you watch the video. You don't need to watch maybe the whole thing, just watch 10 or 15 minutes. What kind of things do you think you might learn by watching a video of yourself teaching? Has anybody had that experience?
You can see your muletillas. I don't know how you say muletillas in English.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we repeat words like, did you understand? And then, did you understand? And maybe we don't notice that, you know, sometimes students get frustrated to listen the same word again and again.
Good. Yeah. So you can hear, you can detect, what do we call muletillas? That's a good question.
In English.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know what is muletilla in Spanish, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay.
But you know something, Professor Erica, that happens to me when we are in virtual classes. Any questions? Do you understand? Hello, are you there? Are you there? Do you understand the lesson? Any question? Every single moment we are repeating the same thing.
And Yeah.
I had a colleague that when he finished speaking, he said, right? Anything he said, right? So we're going to do this and that. And then, you know, right? And then we start calling him right.
Yeah. Although, you know, I mean, in a way, those kind of, maybe Teacher Erica, the best translation I can think of right now would be a pet phrase. So a pet phrase is like a phrase that, you know, that you often use and that you like. I kind of quite like pet phrases. I think it's like part of somebody's identity in a way, you know. There's this very interesting word I'd like to share, this concept I came across recently. So you've heard of the word dialect, right? Dialect means a language spoken by a specific group of people. But have you heard of this word? I'm going to put it in the chat. Idiolect. Have you ever seen that word before? Idiolect?
Nope.
Okay, I had never seen it before. I was reading this chapter and I was like, what is this word? And so I looked it up, and actually what it means is the specific like language or the speech habits of a particular person. So each of us has our own idiolect, right?
Oh, that's a particular way of speaking.
Yeah, and each of us has particular phrases that we use. So I have a colleague called Nick, he's an American, and I say to him, hey Nick, good morning, how are you? And he always says, alive and kicking. That's like his pet phrase, right? And it's become like a joke, like he always says the same thing. I have another friend called Paul, he's from New Zealand, and whenever I say, how are you, Paul? He always says, well, I can't complain, you know, and that's like become like his catchphrase, like we say. So in a way, the teacher that you're describing that's saying, right, that's part of his idiolect. So it's part of his linguistic identity. So I don't think that, you know, we should make fun of people like that. It's part of who they are, right? It's part of what makes their decision to use language in a particular way. So, yeah, but it's a nice word. We all have our own idiolect, right? So each person, when you get to know a person, you start to notice that they use certain phrases every day, right? It's kind of part of getting to know somebody.
Do you know that talking about pet phrases, my high school students always ask me, what are we going to do today? But they really ask because they wanted to have a free time, right? And I always answer, Pinky, we are going to conquer the world. You know, that cartoon that is Pinky Cerebro?
Right.
And sometimes they ask me, and then the other student will answer him. We are going to conquer the world.
Teacher Raphael, are we clear? Do I make myself clear? Is that one of your pet phrases, Teacher Raphael?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So, you know, so I think it was Teacher Mariella said that, you know, you find yourself asking, do you understand?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, there I would say that question is quite frankly a waste of breath. Yeah. Because if you say, do you understand? Everybody goes, yes. You have, but they don't. So you have, well, at least you have no evidence that they do. So do you understand? Don't say that. That's a waste of breath. Okay. You can say, okay, ask them questions that gives you evidence that they understand, but never say, do you understand?
Okay. But you know something, sometimes I say, did I make myself clear? Well, okay, take a sheet of paper now to find out if you really understood what I was teaching. I was telling you.
Yeah, exactly.
Now with virtuality, are you there? You know, like, because you are the only one with the camera on and nobody says anything. Are you there? No.
Yeah.
Okay. Knock the
There was,
door.
I was a very good meme, you know, like meme in Spanish, where somebody was saying like online classes a lot like a seance, you know, like a seance where you're trying to speak with the spirits of the dead. It's like, Carlos, are you there? Can you hear us?
Professor Lowe, my
Yes,
son
I'm here.
texted me once and he told me, Mama, I have a speech. I didn't prepare. Can you send me a voicemail telling me what to say? I said, okay. So I started to say, and I started, for example, Panamá tiene 9 provincias, ¿verdad? Y estamos en Colón, después vamos a Portobelo, ¿verdad? And my son said all the that I said, that was my muletilla. He said all the and the teacher said, "Tú, ¿dónde sacaste esta charla?" And she really failed him. She failed him and said, "Do it over." She gave him the chance because of my muletillas, as Erica said.
Okay. Very good. Okay, guys. So just very quickly, there's just one topic I want to cover before we finish today. And apart from videoing, because videoing, you know, I can understand that some people might feel a bit sensitive about videoing because maybe there are issues to do with consent, right? If you're videoing some, you know, particularly with children involved, I mean, I think that as long as you don't publish it, then there's no problem. But even so, some people might feel uncomfortable about being videoed. So another option, which is less intrusive, is to just do an audio recording, you know? So it's interesting, we've been talking about pet phrases or questions that we ask that really are not worth asking. All of those issues you can detect with an audio, right? You don't really need it to be video. I think video can be more useful for like looking at your body language and are you moving around too much, or, you know, that kind of thing. Maybe the tone, the facial expressions you have. But with an audio, you can get a lot of information about your use of language and your teacher talk, okay? So we mentioned earlier that I think teacher Katia was talking about what would be like a good percentage of teacher talking time and student talking time. And I mean, usually people say that 70% student and 30% teacher is like the way to go. But let's think about, if we use like a cell phone or a recorder, we can reflect on many aspects of our teacher talk. For example, the amount of your TTT, your teacher talking time. You can also reflect on your tone of voice. You know, a lot of teachers are very surprised when they hear themselves. They go, wow, I sound like really angry or really like authoritarian, you know, when they hear their own voice. So it can be interesting to reflect. And also the categories of teacher talk you are using. So what I mean by teacher talk categories, well, I made a list. I mean, maybe you can think of others, but I mean, these are basically the different interventions that we as teachers can make with our words. We can be supportive, we can assert authority, we can give instructions, we can tell, we can model, we can elicit, we can question, we can check learning and understanding, we can be catalytic, in other words, try to spark conversation or debate. We can give encouragement, we can praise, we can correct, we can give feedback, and we can summarize. Maybe there are other things, other categories that you can think of. Those are the ones that I came up with. So when you're listening, what you could do is, it takes a little bit of work, but you could actually, you know, do a transcript, like listen to your recording and actually write down what you were saying, and then analyze, like, okay, am I asking enough questions or am I just telling? Am I giving encouragement or am I just asserting authority? So by kind of writing down what you said and then classifying them into those categories, you can gain some insight into the way that you're speaking in class, and that can be really quite interesting, I think. Okay. All right, guys. So I hope that today has been useful and interesting about how we can reflect on our own classes, how we can invite feedback from peers, supervisors, how we can reflect on our own practice by using audio, video, and even unseen, unobserved lessons, right? Where we involve somebody in the feedback, but we're the ones who are giving the information. And I think involving students is also a really, really positive thing to do. Okay, so tomorrow you have the 4th asynchronous task, okay? And what I would like you to do is to go back to the task where I gave you the teaching philosophy statements, okay? And remember I asked you to indicate whether you agreed totally, partially, or not at all. So I would like you to, under each one, just press return so you can go under. I'd like you to write a text which explains in no more than 50 words for each one, giving me your rationale or your explanation, okay? So for example, if we just look at the first one together, I always correct learners' errors. You could say, I disagree completely. And the reason is that, you know, I think that we should only correct errors when on the spot, when students are in a controlled practice. And otherwise, I prefer to do it in a delayed error correction. Okay? So basically, giving me your reason for your answer. Okay, Teacher Mariela.
Okay, it will be like the one that we were discussing with our partner, right? Because we were doing that in the breakout room. So just only
That's right, the same activity.
Okay.
But this time I want you to give me like a 50-word. I mean, if you want to write more, be my guest, but try to go for around about 50 words, right?
Okay.
Giving me your reason for your answer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm gonna create a new like assignment, and I'll do that as soon as we finish this session. So thank you very much, guys.
We got to choose one or answer 50 words
No,
from
all
A
of
to N.
You've got to do all of them, I'm afraid, teacher. Remember that yeah, I'm sorry, but you remember that the diploma is supposed to have a fairly robust amount of asynchronous work. So I think that, you know, maybe this is not going to take you 4 hours, but it needs to take you, you know, a considerable effort. So yeah, I look forward to receiving your justifications for each one. Okay. Teacher Veronica, over to you.
Thank you. So we thank Professor Daniel for this 4th session. And I'm sure that we are all boom with all kind of ideas and our mind just going with all this information that we are receiving. So I just want to thank you once more. We see each other tomorrow. Remember, if there is anyone that has not signed up for the attendance, please do that before you leave.
Veronica, sorry.
Yes?
Yes, a question before So you finish 15 words or 15 for writing the 50.
50.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Remember remember the photo.
Wait, 50 word for each one.
Correct.
Okay, good.
Okay. Also, those.
Show the link.
Javier?
Sorry, Vero. Listen, Vero.
Yes.
If we write 50 words, we will be writing about 6 or 7 pages.
Well, I mean, it depends how big your font is. I mean,
yeah, we could have more than 7, 8 pages.
No, I don't think that's the case. I mean, 1 or 2. I mean, on a normal word page, you get about, if you're using a 12 as the size of the font, you get about 350 to 400 words per page. So it should be 2 pages max.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Teacher Veronica.
Yes.
Yes. Sure. The photo.
Oh, yeah, la photo. Please turn on.
Hey,
Please
I'm
turn
here.
on your camera so that we can take the photo.
Wait.
Everybody, come on.
Teacher Marisol.
The camera.
Mariela Sunhouse. Juventina. De Gracia.
Teacher Indira, Teacher Enel, okay, Teacher Juventina, Teacher Sudi. Okay, let me change. Wait, give me a second so that I can change, so that we can have a full page with just faces.
Yeah, how do you do that?
Oh, I moved the square of the photo, and I move them. I hold the square that I want to move, and I change it from one page to the other.
But so you can get everybody on one single page?
No. It's 2 pages, but what
Okay.
I'm doing is putting all in the first page,
Okay.
photos, people that have their cameras on, so that we don't have like names and but people.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're
Give
going
me
to
a
take
second.
2 screenshots and then put them together.
Exactly. The second screenshot, then we have people that turn on their cameras.
Okay. Well, almost everyone has their camera on now. So let's say cheese.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Something is happening with Professor Tanya's camera is flashing. Okay.
Tanya.
Is it okay now?
Smile. Here I go. 1, 2, 3, smile. That's the first one. He's smiling because I don't know if everybody is in the same space. Wait. I'm going to the second page. 1, 2, 3, smile. Give me a second. I'm just facing here. Here we go. The other one. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, good. Remember,
good.
if you have not completed your assignments, please do so, because tomorrow is the last day.
Guys, Professor Lowe, does the link, the attendance link that shows up in the classroom, Google Classroom, or?
No, only in the Zoom, So
yeah, that's why you need to. Wait, let me look
maybe
for
they
the
can post.
attendance.
They've been posting it throughout the session, but
yeah,
okay,
I'm going to post it again. I'm
here
going
it
to
is. I
post that.
got it.
Thank you.
I just posted it now.
See you tomorrow. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. See
Bye.
you tomorrow. Remember,
See you
10
tomorrow.
minutes before 1.
Bye. See you.
Yeah, not 3 minutes before like I did today.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. See you.